Chapter 73. Ku Mu had stopped. The person standing before Yi Xian was none other than the Dean of Azure Wave Academy, Old Man Ji. Ku Mu glanced at Old Man Ji while a wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of his mouth. He was just about to speak when Old Man Ji suddenly vanished on the spot. Bang! Everyone watched as Ku Mu's figure was blasted 300 m away. Everyone was stunned. Ku Mu was a divine convergence realm expert. Ku Mu, who'd crawled up from the ground, had astonishment on his face as well. You? How could you possibly? He was a divine convergence realm expert, and he was definitely one of the top experts in the Jianghu kingdom. However, he hadn't even been able to resist a single attack just now. Right at this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly took a step forward, and he'd arrived in front of Ku Mu with just this step. He was only a single step away from Ku Mu. Distance shrink. Ku Mu's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he spoke with astonishment. You're not at the divine convergence realm. Bang! Ku Mu hadn't even finished speaking when his figure was blasted flying once more. Old Man Ji took a huge gulp from the wine gourd on his waist, and then he punched the air in the distance. Bang! The entire expanse of space trembled slightly. Ku Mu's expression changed drastically, and a powerful aura surged out from within him. However, this aura had only just appeared when it was instantly dispersed. In the next moment, a bloody hole had appeared on his chest, and then his figure smashed against a nearby mountain wall. All the students of Karaki Academy were stunned. On the ground, Ku Mu stared at Old Man Ji in the distance. You, hid so deeply. Old Man Ji paid no attention to Ku Mu, who was about to die, and he turned around to look at Yi Xian instead. Right at this moment, two people suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side. It was Imo Yinchi and Bai Zai. Their expressions changed when they saw Yi Xian's appearance. At this moment, there were numerous fine cracks all over Yi Xian's body, and blood was flowing incessantly from the corner of his mouth. It showed no signs of stopping. It was obvious that he had not only suffered from external injuries, but also internal injuries. Meanwhile, Mo Yinchi suddenly turned around and pointed furiously at Ku Mu, and he said furiously, "Fuck your ancestors. You old dog. It's a one-on-one battle between students, yet you want to bully the weak? Motherfucker. Your Karaki Academy is too fucking shameless." Bai Zai nodded and said coldly, "Shameless." Old Man Ji suddenly said, "Take him away." Leave. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stood up and looked at Old Man Ji. Why are you leaving? I'm not leaving. Finished speaking, he pointed his sword at the distant students of Karaki Academy and said in a sinister voice, Dean Ji, our Azure Billow Academy has fewer people, but so what? We don't have many people, but we can't be cowards. Let's fight them today. If we kill one, we'll break even. If we kill two, we'll make a profit. Mo Yinchi nodded by Yi Xian's side, and he looked at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji, it was they who offended us first. They openly came to our Azure Billow Academy to capture someone, and they even bullied the weak. Now, we still want to retreat? They're too fucking cowardly. We're not leaving. Fight them. You fight the old ones, and the three of us fight the young ones. Bai Zai slowly clenched his fists tightly. Fight. Dean Ji glanced at the three of them. Are all of you sure you want to fight? Mo Yinchi was just about to speak when Yi Xian had already charged towards the group of Karaki Academy students with his sword in hand. Mo Yinchi was stunned, and then he said, "Fuck. Do you really think we should fight just because you said so?" As he spoke, he and Bai Zai charged over right after Chen Shi. Besides Bai Zai and Mo Yinchi, there was another person, and it was Ji Anji. The four of them were challenging a group of Karaki Academy students by themselves. Old Man Ji pondered deeply for a moment when he saw the four of them charge towards the group of students, and then he turned around to look at Li Xiao and the others who were nearby. Anyone who's at the higher sky realm or above will die. Li Xiao's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard this, and he hurriedly turned around to look at the old man. Have you notified the dean? The old man nodded. The dean is already on his way back, and he'll be here in 10 minutes at most. Li Xiu nodded. Perhaps only the dean can go against this old man Ji who stands before him. So long as old man Ji is pinned down, then Yi Xian and the others will definitely die. When he thought up to here, a wisp of a ferocious smile arose on the corners of his mouth. Go, all together. When they heard Li Xiu, the other students of Karaki Academy charged directly at Yi Xian's group of 4. Over 100 people. Even the weakest was at the qi-controlling realm or above. Mo Yunqi's eyelids twitched when he saw over 100 people charging over. Big brothers, there are quite a lot of them. Bai Zhe glanced at Mo Yunqi. Are you afraid? Mo Yunqi said angrily, I've never been afraid of anyone. I'll just do it. Right at this moment, Yi Xian, who was leading the charge, swung his sword. In the next moment, the head of a student of Karaki Academy in front of him flew into the air. At the same time, Yi Xian's entire body was blasted flying by another student of Karaki Academy as well. The battlefield instantly descended into chaos. On the other hand, Yi Xian's group of 4 were undoubtedly suppressed. Over 100 people against 4 people. This was a suppression in terms of numbers. Moreover, not a single one of these 100 people was weak. At this moment, their battle intent was high, or it should be said that their killing intent was high. Earlier, Yi Xian had killed quite a few students of Karaki Academy, and he'd even used their corpses to form the words Karaki Academy. Yi Xian's actions had undoubtedly infuriated all the students of Karaki Academy. Suppression. As soon as the battle began, Yi Xian's group of 4 were suppressed, and they were forced to retreat repeatedly. Head to Tsang Mountain Xiao Dao. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's voice suddenly rang out. When Mo Yunqi and the other 2 heard Yi Xian's words, the 3 of them hurriedly retreated while fighting. Soon, the 4 of them retreated to Tsang Mountain Xiao Dao. The Xiao Dao was narrow and could not accommodate too many people. Hence, when the 4 of them retreated to Tsang Mountain Xiao Dao, Karaki Academy's attack instantly weakened. As for Yi Xian, he abruptly stomped his right foot on the ground. In an instant, countless amounts of earth energy gathered around his body. At this moment, a powerful wave of earth energy instantly gathered in his body. He gripped the spirit elegant sword with both hands and fiercely slashed forward. One sword to determine life and death. This sword was imbued with the earth energy. In addition to the fact that his sword was a bright sword, the power of this sword was more terrifying than any of his previous sword strikes. The sword fell. A resplendent sword light gushed out from the tip of the spirit elegant sword like a volcanic eruption. Bang! The 6 or 7 Karaki Academy students in front of Yi Xian were instantly swallowed by this sword light and slashed into pieces. On the ground where Yi Xian stood, a ravine that was a full 5 feet high appeared. Not only that, but the remaining force of the sword heavily injured at least a dozen Karaki Academy students at the side. Li Xiu's expression instantly turned extremely ugly when he saw this sword strike. The power of Yi Xian's sword strike had greatly exceeded his expectations. It was impossible for a qi-controlling realm cultivator to unleash such a terrifying sword strike. The remaining Karaki Academy students also looked at Yi Xian in shock. Besides the ghastly murderous intent in their eyes, there was also a deep sense of fear. That sword strike earlier was truly too terrifying. Old man Ji's eyes were also filled with astonishment. Yi Xian's sword strike had indeed exceeded the limits of the qi-controlling realm. However, he was even more astonished by the energy that had appeared on Yi Xian's body earlier. Mo Yunqi, who was by Yi Xian's side, suddenly wiped off the fresh blood on his face, and then he lightly poked Yi Xian's arm with his right elbow. Big brother, one more strike. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He stomped on the ground and held tightly onto the spirit elegant sword in his hand. In next to no time, boundless energy of the earth converged towards Yi Xian, and the spirit elegant sword in his hand started to tremble madly. The expressions of the Karaki Academy students changed greatly when they saw this scene, and they retreated in succession. Right at this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not too far away from Old Man Ji. The person that had arrived was precisely the Dean of Kuraki Academy, Li Xuanzang. "Greetings, Dean." Countless people present bowed to Li Xuanzang in unison. Li Xuanzang glanced at the nearby ground that was covered in corpses. His gaze stopped on Fenju's corpse for a moment, and then he glanced at the 4 words that Yi Xian had spelled out with corpses. In the end, his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. "You did this?" Yi Xian didn't speak. He stretched out his right hand, and the sword in his hand slashed out. Hiss! A Kuraki Academy student who was caught off guard was directly slashed into 2 by this strike. Li Xuanzang's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this scene. Suddenly, a powerful pressure appeared out of thin air above Yi Xian, and right at this moment, a force suddenly blasted onto the pressure. Bang! Both of them instantly vanished into thin air. Li Xuanzang turned to look at Old Man Ji. "What? Are we going to start a war?" Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine. In the next moment, the ground beneath his feet suddenly trembled violently. No, it wasn't the entire ground, but the entire Tsang mountain was trembling. At the same time, at this moment, the surrounding wind seemed to have stopped, and the light around Old Man Ji directly distorted. Seeing this scene, Li Xuanzang's eyes narrowed slightly. All things distorted. Pinnacle of myriad techniques. I didn't expect that after so many years, you didn't lead a befuddled life, but instead reached this level. Old Man Ji looked straight at Li Xuanzang. In the entire country of Jianghu, including you and me, there are only 4 people at the pinnacle of myriad techniques. If you want to fight, I'll fight with you. Since Tsanglan Academy is already like this, I have no qualms. We might as well turn the world upside down and destroy your Kuraki Academy as well. What do you think? Li Xuanzang stared at Old Man Ji without saying a word. Fight? Once they started fighting, Kuraki Academy would definitely win because they had the advantage in numbers. However, Kuraki Academy would definitely be destroyed. At least 80% of the Kuraki Academy experts present would die, and these students would have no chance of survival. As for Tsanglan Academy? Currently, Tsanglan Academy only had 4 students left. Including the dean, there were a total of 5 people. It could be said that Tsanglan Academy was alone. It wasn't worth it. Li Xuanzang glanced at the corpses on the ground not far away, his face extremely gloomy. After a moment, he looked at Old Man Ji. This matter can be dropped, but, saying this, he suddenly pointed at Yi Xian not far away. This person must die. If he doesn't die, you want to destroy indiscriminately? Sure. As Li Xuanzang's voice fell, several figures suddenly appeared around Old Man Ji and the others. All 6 of them were at the Divine Combination realm. Chapter 74. Yi Xian must die. This was Li Xuanzang's attitude, or rather, the entire Kuraki Academy's attitude. The talent and strength that Yi Xian displayed was simply too terrifying, especially when even Fenju died in his hands. If he was allowed to continue growing, Kuraki Academy would be in great danger during the life and death competition between the 2 academies in a year's time. This was secondary. The most important thing was that with the strength and talent that Yi Xian displayed, when he fully matured, he could even threaten Kuraki Academy. Moreover, the news of Yi Xian killing so many Kuraki Academy students had probably already spread throughout the imperial capital. If Yi Xian didn't die, it would deal a heavy blow to Kuraki Academy's reputation and prestige. Therefore, to Li Xuanzang and the entire Kuraki Academy, Yi Xian must die. Mo Yinqi, Bai Zai, and Ji Anji looked at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine, then looked at Li Xuanzang. He must die. Li Xuanzang said indifferently, if he dies, everything can be discussed. If he doesn't die, nothing can be discussed. Old Man Ji shook his head with a smile, then looked at the nearby Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian looked at Old Man Ji. If Old Man Ji wants to keep the peace, the best solution is to sacrifice me in exchange for peace. Old Man Ji smiled. Are you willing to die? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't want to die. Moreover, I don't think Old Man Ji is that stupid. Although sacrificing me can temporarily keep the peace, Zhanglan Academy will forever kneel in front of Kuraki Academy, unable to raise its head for generations to come. As he spoke, he looked at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji, they bullied us first, why should we make peace with them? Yes, our strength is inferior to theirs, but so what? As he finished speaking, he pointed his long sword at the Kuraki Academy students. Do you know why these people and those people in the imperial capital look down on Zhanglan Academy? It's because we are fucking cowards. Our Zhanglan Academy is always cowering in front of them. We are cowards ourselves, overcautious and indecisive, thinking about this and that. How can they look up to us? Zhanglan Academy has been kneeling for a long time. I don't want to kneel anyway. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to face the students of Kuraki Academy. You ask me what I think, and I only have one attitude. If we don't make peace, we won't stop. Fight with them, fight until all 5 of us are dead. Fight. Right at this moment, Mo Yinshi suddenly stood up from the side. Old Man Ji, after I joined Zhanglan Academy, I didn't dare to tell my family that I was from Zhanglan Academy. When I went out, I didn't even dare to wear Zhanglan Academy's uniform. I was afraid that people would recognize me as Zhanglan Academy's student. Outside, it was as if the moment I said I was from Zhanglan Academy, I was the son of Kuraki Academy. This kind of feeling was 2F** King sullen. Finished speaking, he pointed at Yi Xian. Today, Kuraki Academy openly came to Zhanglan Academy to capture his little sister. This is AF** King face slapping, F** King bullying. If we don't fight this fight, wouldn't the students of Kuraki Academy come to our Azure Billow Academy and shit on our heads? Fight. Fight them. At worst, we'll all perish together. Bai Zhe, who stood by Mo Yinshi's side, nodded. Fight. Fight to the death. Ji Anji didn't speak, but he'd already drawn the saber at his waist, and his intentions were very obvious. Old Man Ji glanced at Yi Xian's group of 3, and then he grinned. After that, he gazed at Chen Xuanzang, who stood nearby. Since your Kuraki Academy wants to take us down with you, then so be it. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly gulped down a mouthful of wine. In the next moment, a formidable pressure suddenly swept out from within him. Crack. With Old Man Ji at the center, the ground in an area of over 1 kilometer instantly collapsed. At the same time, a formidable pressure swept through the surroundings like a whirlwind. This pressure was aimed straight at Chen Xuanzang. Chen Xuanzang's expression finally changed when he witnessed this scene. Because he hadn't expected that Old Man Ji would choose to fight to the death with him. As far as he was concerned, Old Man Ji would definitely sacrifice Yi Xian in order to protect the remaining students of Zhanglan Academy and plan for the future. However, Old Man Ji didn't do that. He chose to fight to the death. Old Man Ji wasn't an idiot. If he gave up on Yi Xian, then Mo Yinshi and Bai Zhe would definitely leave Zhanglan Academy immediately. It wasn't just the 2 of them, even his own granddaughter might turn against him. Moreover, and it was the most important point, the potential and strength that Yi Xian revealed caused Kuraki Academy to be fearful, but wasn't he the hope of Zhanglan Academy as well? How could he possibly sacrifice Yi Xian? Perhaps there was a trace of hope if he protected Yi Xian, but if he sacrificed Yi Xian, then Zhanglan Academy would absolutely have no hope. No genius or monstrous genius would be willing to join an academy that sacrificed its students. As soon as Old Man Ji attacked, the expressions of everyone on the side of Kuraki Academy instantly changed. On the other hand, all the Divine Union Realm experts around Yi Xian's group were blasted backwards repeatedly by the pressure that Old Man Ji emanated. All of them revealed astounded expressions. The peak of the myriad technique realm. If such an expert were to fight to the death, then it was obvious that even if Yi Xian and the others perished in battle, the entire Kuraki Academy would still be crushed. At this moment, Li Xuanzang's expression was extremely unsightly as well. because he didn't intend to fight to the death with Old Man Ji. Karaki Academy was huge now, but what about Sanglan Academy? It was on the verge of bankruptcy. Karaki Academy would suffer a huge loss if they fought to the death at this moment. Right when the battle was about to erupt, a voice suddenly resounded. Wait a moment, Old Man Ji. As soon as this voice resounded, a gray-robed old man suddenly appeared here. Old Man Ji stopped and turned around to look at the gray-robed old man. What are you doing here? The gray-robed old man was the previous king of the state of Jianghu, Jianghu. He was one of the 4 great Dharma realm experts of the state of Jianghu. Jianghu laughed bitterly. If I didn't come out, then half of the imperial capital would have probably been destroyed by all of you. As he spoke, he glanced at Li Xuanzang, who stood nearby. Brotherly, it's not good for the old man to say anything now that the matter has developed to such an extent. How about this? Let me be the mediator, and we'll put an end to the matter today. Li Xuanzang laughed coldly. Put an end to the matter? As he spoke, he pointed at the nearby corpses and said, so they're just going to die for nothing? Jiang Yuetian's brows knit together slightly. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid the imperial capital would fall into chaos, he would wish for nothing more than for the 2 powers to fight to the death. Presently, the Jiang kingdom had a foreign enemy, the Tang kingdom, so it couldn't fall into chaos at all. Jiang Yuetian pondered deeply for a moment before he said, Brotherly, Karaki Academy has experienced 1,000 years of glory since the dean of the Jiang kingdom. Amongst the surrounding kingdoms, the Jiang kingdom's Karaki Academy is the strongest, and it's pursuing its glory. But if the battle continues, then perhaps Sanglan Academy will be completely annihilated. However, with Brother Ji's strength, you can still destroy Karaki Academy by taking it down with you. At that time, Brother Li will be condemned through the ages. Li Xuanzang clenched his fists tightly while a gloomy expression appeared on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. Jiang Yuetian continued, with Brother Li's ability, it's very likely that you'll head to the headquarters of Karaki Academy in the Central Divine Prefecture and enter the Hall of Talents. However, if the kingdom of Jiang's Karaki Academy is destroyed at your hands, then it might not be a good thing for you. Li Xuanzang was slightly moved when he heard this. The Hall of Excellence. That was the ultimate goal of all the students, instructors, and even the dean of Karaki Academy. Meanwhile, Jiang Yuetian said, in the end, it's a battle between the younger generation. How about we continue allowing them to fight and fight? Brother Ji, Brotherly, what do the 2 of you think? Old Man Ji spoke indifferently, I have no problem with that. Li Xuanzang glanced coldly at Old Man Ji and said, all right, I have no problem with that as well. As he spoke, he gazed at Jiang Yuetian and said, Brother Jiang, please be a witness. My Karaki Academy and Sanglan Academy are irreconcilable enemies from this moment onward, and no one above the age of 25 is allowed to fight. What do you think? If any side breaks the rules, then I hope Brother Jiang can come out and uphold justice, alright? Both Old Man Ji and Jiang Yuetian gazed at Li Xuanzang when they heard this. This wasn't normal. Because there was clearly no one in Karaki Academy who could suppress Yi Xian's group right now. But Li Xuanzang still made such a suggestion at a time like this, and it was extremely unusual. Jiang Yuetian pondered deeply for a moment, and then he gazed at Old Man Ji who stood nearby. Old Man Ji gazed at Yi Xian's group instead. Yi Xian shrugged and said, we have no problem with that. Old Man Ji gazed at Li Xuanzang and said, all right. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at Yi Xian's group and said, let's go. Just like that, Yi Xian's group left Karaki Academy under Old Man Ji's lead. Jiang Yuetian sighed softly, and then he left Karaki Academy. Li Xuanzang gazed at the corpses on the ground with a gloomy expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. Li Xiu was just about to speak when Li Xuanzang suddenly turned around and glanced coldly at him. This is what you've done. Li Xiu's expression was slightly unsightly. The experts of Karaki Academy in the surroundings gazed at Li Xiu as well, and all of them had extremely hostile expressions. After all, Yi Xian had sought to join Karaki Academy, and it was Li Xiu and Zhang Zhong who'd forced Yi Xian to leave. Now, Yi Xian had become a formidable enemy of Kuraki Academy. If Yi Xian was in Kuraki Academy, then Azure Water Academy would definitely be suppressed to the point of being unable to raise its head for 100 years. Unfortunately, he'd gone to Azure Water Academy instead. What a pity. What a pity. They hadn't thought of it in the past, but after they witnessed Yi Xian's strength and potential, they would be lying if they said they didn't feel regret. Even Li Xuanzang felt slightly regretful. He regretted not coming out to have a look himself. If he had, then Yi Xian's Kuraki Academy wouldn't have missed out on such an extraordinary genius. A short moment later, Li Xuanzang suddenly said, "Is Zhang Zhong still in the academy?" An old man nodded. "He is." Li Xuanzang said indifferently, "What's the point of keeping him? Kill him immediately." The old man hesitated for a moment, then nodded, "Yes." With that, he turned and left. Li Xuanzang glanced at Li Xiu. "As for you, reflect on yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and walked up the mountain. "Send a summons to all the Zhanglan Academy in the Azure Prefecture. Tell them that my Jianghu country's Zhanglan Academy needs support. Anyone that's able to kill Yi Xian and the other students of Zhanglan Academy will be rewarded with a high-grade Earth rank technique, a high-grade Earth rank movement technique, a high-grade Earth rank technique, and 500,000 top-grade spirit stones, requesting reinforcements. P.S. I was chatting with a reader yesterday, and the reader said, if there's a pirated version to read, why should I read the original? For a moment, I was speechless. At this moment, I felt a little sad. I can only write 1 chapter in the morning, and I have to write 3 chapters a day. I have to spend time in the morning, noon, and night. I can't rest before 10 p.m. every day. Moreover, I have to spend time to edit and check for typos the next day. When I told you about finding a rich woman, half of it wasn't a joke. It's really damn tiring. Of course, most of it is because I'm touched. I'm touched that many of my friends came to support me even though they could read a pirated version. Moreover, they were willing to spend money to tip me or vote for me. Chapter 75. The Azure world had 3 continents, the Azure continent, the Divine Central Continent, and the Azure Below Continent. In the Azure continent, besides the largest empire, the Great Cloud Empire, there were nearly 100 other countries. Besides these countries, there were also various thousand-year-old clans and mysterious mountain powers. Kuraki Academy didn't belong to the mountain powers, but even those mysterious mountain powers didn't dare underestimate this academy. Because Kuraki Academy was spread throughout the entire Azure continent. Even the Great Cloud Empire had a Kuraki Academy, but that wasn't the most terrifying part. Rumor had it that Kuraki Academy's headquarters stood in the most glorious land of the Martial Way, the Divine Central Continent. In the Azure continent, the various Kuraki Academies were like nobles, and they only listened to the orders of the Kuraki Academy in the Divine Central Continent. However, this didn't mean that there was no contact between them. All the Kuraki Academies in the Azure continent competed against each other, but they also cooperated. A summon. This was one of their methods of cooperation. When one party was in trouble, they could summon help from all over. Of course, it wasn't free help, and there was a price to pay. The price that Kuraki Academy had paid wasn't just a small price, it was extremely huge. High-grade Earth rank cultivation techniques, high-grade Earth rank martial techniques, high-grade Earth rank movement techniques, and 500,000 top-grade spirit stones. Not to mention a chi-controlling realm and a few ascension realms, even killing a divine unity realm expert would be a price that countless people would pay. There would always be brave men under heavy rewards. In next to no time, countless spirit pigeons soared into the sky from Kuraki Academy and flew in all directions. It was a rather magnificent scene. The Imperial Capital. Kuraki Academy didn't have the ability to suppress what Yi Xian had done in Kuraki Academy, so it didn't take long for the entire Imperial Capital to know what Yi Xian had done in Kuraki Academy. Shock. The entire Imperial Capital was shocked. How many years had it been since Azure Billow Academy had faded out of sight? No, it had faded out of sight. But now, Azure Billow Academy actually dared to fight Kuraki Academy head-on. And they just won. The most terrifying thing was that Yi Xian had actually killed one of the most monstrous geniuses of Kuraki Academy, Fenju, and even used the corpses of Kuraki Academy's students to write the words Kuraki Academy in front of Kuraki Academy. This was a fierce slap to Kuraki Academy's face. Yi Xian. This time, Yi Xian's name once again spread throughout the imperial capital. Unlike last time, this time, countless people were curious about him, and some even admired him. A swordsman was always easily worshipped. In short, this time, Zhanglan Academy could be said to have a whole new level of respect for the entire imperial capital. Old Ji brought Yi Xian's group of 4 back to Azure Billow Academy. In front of Azure Billow Hall, Yi Xian saw Yi Ling. Yi Ling threw herself into Yi Xian's arms. She hugged Yi Xian tightly, fearing that Yi Xian would disappear. She didn't cry. She simply hugged Yi Xian, and there was an unusual determination in her eyes. Looking at Yi Ling in his arms, Yi Xian's cold expression softened. He gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "Brother promised you that I would come back." As he spoke, he looked at the black-dressed woman in a wheelchair not far away. "How should I address you?" The black-dressed woman pondered for a moment, then said, "Lu Jioga." Yi Xian nodded. "Miss Lu, thank you." The black-dressed woman shook her head. "You are a state knight, and the state of Jianghu is on your side. Kuraki Academy will not let this matter rest. Take care." After speaking, the old man behind her pushed her away. The state of Jianghu. Yi Xian glanced at the black-dressed woman's back. "I'll remember it." The black-dressed woman nodded slightly, and soon, the two disappeared not far away. At this time, Yi Ling suddenly said, "Brother, I'll go cook for you. We want to eat too." At this time, Mo Yinchi, who was behind Yi Xian, suddenly chuckled. "Xiao Ling, make some for us too." Bai Zai nodded. "Me too." Yi Ling chuckled. "There will be some." After speaking, she turned and ran away quickly. At this time, Old Man Ji suddenly pointed with his finger, and soon, 4 golden pills fell in front of Yi Xian and the others. "Go and heal your injuries first." Yi Xian nodded, then picked up his pill and walked to his room. Mo Yinchi looked at the pill in front of him, then exclaimed, "Old Man Ji, this pill is extraordinary." As he spoke, he looked at Old Man Ji. "Actually, you are quite rich. Speaking of which, since you are so rich, can you improve the quality of our lives? Or you can recruit a few female students too." Old Man Ji said indifferently. "Scram." Mo Yinchi chuckled. "You can think about it, especially the last one." After speaking, he turned and ran away. Bai Zai and Ji Anji turned and left as well. At this moment, Jiang Yuetian appeared not too far away from Old Man Ji. Jiang Yuetian glanced into the distance, and then said, "The 3 fellows you recruited are all not bad, especially that Yi Xian. This kid is not simple." Old Man Ji said indifferently, "Normally, your imperial family would wish for my Zhanglan Academy and Kuraki Academy to fight to the death, but you came out today to be the peacemaker. That's not normal." Jiang Yuetian laughed. "Indeed, I wish for you to fight to the death with Li Xuanzang. But what about after that? Your Zhanglan Academy will be completely destroyed, and Kuraki Academy will be heavily injured, but will it end just like that?" "No, Azure Prefecture's Kuraki Academy will continue to send people over here to rebuild Kuraki Academy. At that time, they will truly be the strongest." Old Man Ji said indifferently, "I understand. You want my Zhanglan Academy to continue wasting time with Kuraki Academy." Jiang Yuetian shook his head. "Old Man Ji, this old man will be frank with you. This time, my imperial family stands on your side. Of course, we can't openly help you, but we are willing to help you secretly. After all, that kid is a state scholar, and he has a good relationship with Little Jiu. My imperial family values him greatly." Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine and fell silent. Jianghu laughed. Old man Ji, you won't object, right? Old man Ji shook his head. I won't object, but don't play any tricks on him. Jianghu laughed. Of course not. We will protect him in secret as well. This kid isn't just loyal, he also cares about his country. This time, he helped little Jiao Tian greatly. My imperial family has no ill intentions towards him, this old man can guarantee. Old man Ji nodded. That's good. With that, he drank a mouthful of wine and turned to leave. Jianghu Tian turned to glance at Sanglan Academy, and said with a smile, Great swordsman. What a great swordsman. With that, he turned and disappeared on the spot. Inside the kitchen, Yi Ling was cooking by the fire. At this moment, a little girl suddenly appeared not far from her. The little girl wore a small cotton jacket, with a long braid behind her head, and looked quite cute. Yi Ling glanced at the little girl, but didn't say anything. The little girl said calmly, Your brother almost died today. Yi Ling hugged her knees, and didn't say anything. The little girl looked straight at Yi Ling. You've already implicated him many times. Today, he almost died because of you, and in the future, his enemies might still target you. Yi Ling's tears suddenly flowed down, and she couldn't stop wiping them away. The little girl walked in front of Yi Ling. You have to be independent, and you have to become stronger. Only then will you not implicate your brother. No, I should say, in the future, you will be able to protect your brother better. Yi Ling raised her head to look at the little girl. Big brother is very powerful. Can I protect him? The corners of the little girl's mouth curled up. He is very powerful, but compared to you, he is far inferior. As long as you come with me, I can guarantee that in the future, you will be even more dazzling than the country of Zhang and Guisher. Yi Ling was stunned, and then said, Why? The little girl's smile gradually widened, or rather, she was a little excited, because you have the cold spirit physique, a legendary special physique. As long as you come with me, my cold north sect will use all its resources to nurture you, and let you kill your way through the Azure World's monster list. Yi Ling was silent for a long time, and finally, she raised her head to look at the little girl. I promise you. The little girl was wild with joy, but at this moment, Yi Ling said, But, I have to accompany Big Brother for a while. The little girl hesitated, and then nodded. Okay, I will come find you when the time comes. After saying that, she turned around and disappeared. In front of the stove, Yi Ling hugged her knees, and just stared blankly at the flames in the stove. Night. In the Azure Wave Palace, everyone gathered. It was time to eat. There were more than 10 dishes on the table, and all of them were personally prepared by Yi Ling and Yi Xian. During this time, Yi Ling would occasionally put food into Yi Xian's bowl, and all of them were meat. This caused Mo Yinchi and the others to be speechless. This was his biological sister. After the meal, old man Ji took a sip of wine, and then said, Let me tell you some bad news. Kuraki Academy has already issued a summon order. In the entire Azure province, there are a total of 72 Kuraki Academies, and country of Zhang's Kuraki Academy is only one of them. Now, they have issued a summon order, and they are offering extremely high rewards, which means that the super geniuses and monsters of the remaining 71 Kuraki Academies may come to country of Jiang. After saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian and the others. What you will face next is not 1 or 2 geniuses and monsters, but a group of them, and I can't do anything. Yi Xian raised the bowl of soup in front of him, and drank it in one gulp. Just do it. Beside Yi Xian, Mo Yinchi nodded. We can only do it. After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something, and then looked at old man Ji. Old man, Kuraki Academy has so many branches. What about Artsanglan Academy? Speaking of which, does Artsanglan Academy not have any background? Yi Xian also looked at old man Ji. This was also the reason why he was curious. Old man Ji was silent, and after a moment, he took a sip of wine, and then said softly, Artsanglan Academy headquarters is located in the Central Plains, and together with Kuraki Academy, we are known as the 2 branches, and Artsanglan Academy has a total of 108 branches in Sanglan continent. At this moment, Mo Yinchi suddenly stood up. Old man, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and call for help. Bai Zai hurriedly nodded in agreement. Call for help. Old man Ji shook his head. I can't. Mo Yinchi was stunned, and then said, Why? Old man Ji said softly, This side has declined. We are the weakest among all the branches of Tsang Lan Academy. To put it bluntly, they look down on us, and they don't even want to be associated with us, and they don't acknowledge us, understand? Chapter 76. The expressions of Yi Xian and the others stiffened. Old man Ji, on the other hand, kept drinking without saying a word. Mo Yinchi hesitated for a moment and said, Old man, you guys did not do well in the past. Old man Ji glanced at Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi's expression changed slightly and he quickly said, Old man, we can talk this out. Don't fight. Old man Ji shook his head slightly. In this Qingzhou, our Kanglan Academy was once glorious. However, this is all in the past. There is no point in talking about it now. The three of you, follow me to the back mountain. After saying that, he stood up and left. Yi Xian and the others stood up and followed him. Only Yi Ling was left in the hall. Yi Ling clenched her small hands tightly. Brother. I will work hard too. Her eyes were filled with determination. Back mountain. Old man Ji brought the three of them to a waterfall. His gaze landed on Bai Zai. Now, we need to increase the intensity of your training. We need to stimulate the power of the demon beast bloodline in your body as soon as possible. After saying that, he pointed to a pile of 2 metal balls the size of a human head not far away. Old man Ji said calmly, Wear it and go under the waterfall. Bai Zai hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He hung the 2 metal balls on his body, and the ground beneath his feet clearly caved in a little. Under everyone's gaze, Bai Zai came to the bottom of the waterfall and tied his feet to the iron chain. Soon, Bai Zai's beast-like howls came from under the waterfall. Mo Yinchi could not bear to look at it. This was too cruel. At this moment, old man Ji looked at him. Seeing this, Mo Yinchi's expression changed slightly and he quickly said, Old man, I think I am already very strong. Old man Ji said calmly, Are you sure? Mo Yinchi nodded quickly. Yes. Old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. Use that sword on him to determine life and death. Mo Yinchi was speechless. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi jumped up. Old man, are you joking? Don't get drunk. Old man Ji said indifferently, Rather than letting you die at the hands of those Kuraki students, it's better to let you die at the hands of your own people. This way, it'll be more dignified. Mo Yinchi was silent. Yi Xian walked to his side and gently patted his shoulder. Isn't it just a little hardship? It's no big deal. If you really don't want to suffer, that's fine too. I guarantee that this sword won't kill you. At most, it will cripple you. The corner of Mo Yinchi's mouth twitched. He hesitated for a moment and looked at old man Ji. Tell me, how are you going to torture me? Old man Ji casually tossed a long iron chain in front of Mo Yinchi. There were small iron balls tied to the chain. Old man Ji said calmly, Wear it and run 100 laps around our back mountain. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once in the evening. The time limit is an hour. If you exceed the time limit, you'll have to add another 20 laps. Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. The back mountain was not small. The entire journey was at least 40 to 50 kilometers, and the time limit was an hour, and he had to carry this iron ball. In any case, he couldn't do it. Mo Yinchi's face fell. Old man, do you want me to run until my legs break? Old man Ji said calmly, Running until your legs break is better than being broken by others. Let's start now. If you say another word of nonsense, I'll add another 10 laps. Mo Yinchi. A moment later, Mo Yinchi began. As he ran, he shouted strangely. No one knew what he was shouting about. At this time, old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. How to cultivate, I'll listen to old man Ji's instructions. Old Man Ji looked at Yi Xian with a complicated gaze. The power you used at Kuraki Academy before, was it the power of the earth? Yi Xian nodded. Old Man Ji sighed softly. You're a little mysterious, but that's not important. Follow me. After saying that, he brought Yi Xian and Ji Anji to a small mountain. This small mountain in front of them was the one Yi Xian didn't finish blasting before. Yi Xian said softly, Old Man Ji, do you want me to continue blasting this small mountain? Old Man Ji said, yes and no. Yi Xian looked at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji said softly, you're a swordsman and a martial artist. I don't understand the path of the sword Dao Yi, but I know a thing or two about the path of the martial Dao Yi. After saying that, he pointed at the small mountain in the distance. What do you think it is? Yi Xian said in a deep voice. A mountain. Old Man Ji shook his head. It's not a mountain. It's an obstacle. After saying that, he suddenly punched out. Boom! With a single punch, the small mountain collapsed with a loud rumble. Just like that, a small mountain collapsed. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He knew that Old Man Ji was powerful, but he was still very shocked when he saw Old Man Ji's punch again. The power of a single punch was so strong. Old Man Ji turned to look at Yi Xian. Do you know what you lack the most? Yi Xian shook his head. Old Man Ji said softly, when you're angry, you have enough killing intent, but not enough aura. You have killing intent, but not aura. Although your combat strength isn't weak, it's not enough. If you can mix your killing intent with aura, you'll be much stronger. Not only that, you'll be one step closer to becoming a martial Dao Grandmaster. As he said that, he looked at the collapsed small mountain in the distance. What is aura? Aura is a psychological suppression. When you faced the small mountain earlier, you treated it as a mountain that's difficult to destroy. In terms of mental state, you've already lost. You should treat it as a piece of trash that's blocking your path, a piece of trash that you can destroy at any time. Yi Xian said in a low voice, but it's not trash. Isn't that a little self-deceiving? Good question. Old Man Ji looked at Yi Xian. I'm very pleased that you can think that way. And I want you to understand that aura is a form of confidence. When facing an enemy, you must have the confidence that you're invincible. Those who are your enemies, those who stand in front of you, and those who block your path are all trash. Of course, confidence isn't arrogance. To put it simply, we have to look down on our enemies strategically and take them seriously tactically. As he said that, he pointed to the collapsed small mountain in front of him. In my heart, this is a pile of trash. However, when I attack, I won't look down on it at all. Not only will I not look down on it, but I will also use my full strength. I look down on you in my heart, but I take you seriously when I attack. Yi Xian turned to look at the small mountain in the distance and fell into deep thought. Old Man Ji said again, do you know why Enlancio is strong? Yi Xian turned to look at Old Man Ji. Old Man Ji said softly, she's strong because of her aura. Even when facing enemies who are much stronger than her, she doesn't feel the slightest fear in her heart. Even when facing me, she doesn't feel the slightest bit of weakness in terms of aura. She can't beat me, but she has never been afraid of me. This kind of aura is rare among the younger generation of the state of Jianghu. As he said that, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. You don't have aura, but you have something that others don't. What is it? Yi Xian asked subconsciously. Old Man Ji said softly, fearlessness. Fearlessness? Yi Xian was puzzled. Old Man Ji said, you don't have that kind of domineering aura, but you've never been afraid of anyone either. In Kuraki Academy, even though you knew that you had no chance of winning, you didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. You dared to fight when you said you wanted to. Not only that, when you faced that girl, you didn't feel the slightest bit of weakness in your state of mind when you talked to her. Perhaps this is also the reason why she thinks so highly of you. As he said that, he glanced at Yi Xian. From you, I think of a saying, you can be weak, but you can't be a coward. Yi Xian, at this moment, old man Ji suddenly said, follow me. As he said that, he led Yi Xian into the distance. Soon, he brought Yi Xian to another mountain. This mountain was several times bigger than the previous one. The previous mountain could barely be called a mountain, but this one was a real mountain, and it wasn't small at all. Old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. What's your first feeling when you see this mountain? Yi Xian thought for a moment before saying, if you want me to shatter this mountain with one punch, then I think you must be crazy. Old man Ji drank a mouthful of wine. This is what you lack. You don't fear the enemy when they are powerful. In this aspect, you do better than many people. However, you lack that domineering aura of wanting to kill you no matter how powerful you are. No, it should be said that you have that aura, but only when your sister is in danger will you have it. As he said that, he drank another mouthful of wine. I'll just stand here and think. When I understand, I'll leave. After he finished speaking, he leisurely walked to a rock at the side, tilted his body, and directly lay down on the rock. Not long after, sounds of snoring could be heard. Yi Xian looked at the small mountain in front of him and fell silent. Aura? In actuality, he had sensed it before. It was from Enlancio. The feeling Enlancio gave him was that there was no problem in this world that could stump her, and there was no one that she could not defeat. Of course, the most obvious was the mysterious woman. Back on the cloud ship, the mysterious woman's aura with the water sword in her hand had truly shocked him. If I want you to live, you will live. If I want you to die, you will die. One sword to decide life and death. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was suddenly stunned. In the next moment, he suddenly took out his spirit elegant sword. Yi Xian held the sword in his hand and looked at the small mountain in the distance. In his mind, the scene of the mysterious woman on the cloud ship kept appearing. That woman held the water sword as if there was no one in this world that she could not kill. Wasn't this a type of aura? She used one sword to decide life and death, and he used one sword to decide life and death. But why was there such a huge difference? Putting aside his realm and strength, his state of mind was already biased. One sword to decide life and death. What this sword technique required the most wasn't cultivation but aura. The aura of, if I want you to live, then you will live, and if I want you to die, then you will definitely die. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. So I misunderstood this sword technique. As he spoke, he raised his head and looked at the nearby mountain. A sword howl suddenly resounded. In the next moment. Bang! A powerful aura surged out from Yi Xian's body, and the ground before him cracked inch by inch. Not far away, old Ji suddenly sat up. He stared blankly at Yi Xian in the distance. What the hell? I taught you to comprehend fist aura, but you comprehend sword aura? What the hell are you talking about? Chapter 77. Sword Force. In the distance, Yi Xian held the spirit grace sword in his hand, and he emanated a peerlessly domineering aura. This aura was based on the sword, so it could be considered as a sword force. With the spirit elegant sword in hand, Yi Xian slowly walked towards the huge mountain. With every step he took, the ground in front of him would crack several feet apart. Not long after, with him as the center, the ground within a radius of several hundred feet around him had already cracked into a spider web shape. Not far away, old Ji stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, he didn't seem drunk at all, and there was only seriousness on his face. Sword force. It wasn't just the sword force that Yi Xian had revealed, it was also the sword technique that he was about to execute. Even though Yi Xian hadn't executed the sword technique, he'd already sensed the sword technique's force. This was absolutely not something that an earth-rank sword technique could accomplish. At this moment, he didn't care about the force. Instead, he cared about why Yi Xian possessed such a terrifying sword technique. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and the sword force around him instantly vanished without a trace. Yi Xian lowered his head to look at the spirit grace sword that was trembling slightly in his hand. I won't disgrace you. A sword howl resounded abruptly. Yi Xian grinned and released his hand. In the next moment, the spirit grace sword transformed into a sword light that flashed. Sword light flickered around Yi Xian, controlling the sword with qi. Presently, he was even more proficient in controlling the sword because his compatibility with the spirit grace sword had reached 80%. Right at this moment, old Ji suddenly said, "Why didn't you execute that strike?" Yi Xian turned to look at old Ji. He tapped with his finger, and the spirit grace sword suddenly landed firmly on his right. He smiled and said, "There's no need for that strike. Because I've understood what force is." Force. It could be said that his current strike to decide life and death had already surpassed the superior grade Earth rank without the energy of the Earth being mixed in. If it was combined with the energy of the Earth, then this strike would absolutely not be inferior to a heaven rank martial technique. It should be said that in his heart at this moment, deciding life and death with a single strike was no longer just a sword technique. It was also a kind of sword Dao concept and state of mind. Old Ji looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Suddenly, he smiled. Kuraki Academy's expulsion of the youth in front of him was the greatest loss they had suffered in the past several hundred years. Without a doubt, that was the most profitable one he had ever made in so many years. Old man Ji patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. It's good to be young. With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian did not leave. After he sheathed his sword, he raised his head and looked at the mountain not far away. He slowly clenched his right fist. Boom! An invisible pressure suddenly rippled out from his fist. Step by step, Yi Xian walked towards the mountain in front of him. When he was about 10 feet away from the mountain wall suddenly cracked. At this moment, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His right hand clenched tightly. Crack, 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 the entire mountain wall continued to crack, and the crack spread rapidly in all directions. He was pressuring others with force. The fist Dao? The sword Dao? Most of the time, they were actually connected. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and then he suddenly charged forward and smashed his fist against the mountain wall. Boom! Yi Xian's entire arm pierced through the mountain wall. In the next moment, the mountain wall collapsed, and countless rocks shot into the air before being crushed into powder. Yi Xian moved over 10 back. There was a pitch-black hole in the mountain wall before him, and it was so deep that he could not see the bottom of it. Actually, this punch of his wasn't an area of effect attack, it was a single target attack. This punch was something he'd thought of on the spur of the moment. He just wanted to try it out in the beginning, but he hadn't expected it to actually be so powerful. Even though it wasn't as powerful as his sword Dao, it was at least a few times stronger than the punch annihilation from before. It could be said that this punch of his could even instantly annihilate a levitation realm profounder. If it was combined with the energy of the earth, then it could even pose a threat to a nether passage realm profounder. Yi Xian glanced at his fist and chuckled. I'll call this move one punch to the head, and it's a fist technique that was made for smashing heads. I created it myself, heh heh. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. As he left, another layer of the mountain wall behind him suddenly collapsed. Yi Xian arrived before the waterfall, and Bai Zai was still howling incessantly beneath it. Yi Xian sized Bai Zai up carefully and was slightly surprised. Because he noticed that the veins on Bai Zai's body had bulged up, and the blood vessels beneath his skin were actually trembling slightly. The energy of his bloodline? Yi Xian was slightly curious. He'd heard of some people who possessed a half-human half-demon physique. These people possessed the bloodline of demon beasts, and if they were able to activate the demon bloodline within their bodies, then they would be able to obtain demon energy and improve their strength greatly. On the other hand, Bai Zai obviously hadn't truly activated the energy of his bloodline. Once Bai Zai activated the energy of his bloodline, then his body and strength would definitely undergo a qualitative transformation. After all, Baize's current strength was extremely formidable. Once the demon beast bloodline within his body was activated, then he would definitely become even stronger. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around and saw a figure dashing madly not too far away. It was Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi's clothes were completely drenched, and he was exhausted like an ox. Meanwhile, Mo Yinchi suddenly gazed at Yi Xian who stood nearby, and he was stunned when he saw Yi Xian. After that, he said, You didn't cultivate? Yi Xian nodded. I didn't. Mo Yinchi blinked, and then he said furiously in the next moment, Fuck. Why didn't you cultivate? Why didn't Geezer Ji torture you? That's too unfair. Yi Xian walked over to Mo Yinchi, and he patted Mo Yinchi on the shoulder lightly. Do you know what a genius is? As he spoke, he pointed at himself. See that? This is a genius. I'm going to sleep. You run slowly, I'll support you spiritually. After that, he left into the distance. On the spot, Mo Yinchi suddenly spat to the side, Genius? Shameless thing. Just you wait, I'll beat you until you cry. After that, he turned and ran into the distance, wailing and howling as he ran. No one knew what he was howling about. When Yi Xian returned to the Kanglan Palace, Yi Ling wasn't asleep. Instead, she sat on the stone steps and hugged her knees. When she saw Yi Xian, she jumped up. Yi Xian walked over to Yi Ling, and he gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. He said gently, Why aren't you asleep yet? Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian's arm and pulled him to sit on the stone steps. Then, she gently leaned her head on Yi Xian's shoulder and said softly, I want to accompany Big Brother. Yi Xian smiled and said, Big Brother is always here. Yi Ling tilted her head and looked at Yi Xian. Big Brother, if I can cultivate, will you object? Yi Xian was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said, Why would I object? If you can cultivate, you'll be able to protect Big Brother in the future. Yi Xian blinked, then grinned. She hugged Yi Xian's arm tightly, then looked up at the sky. The night sky was dotted with stars. Yi Ling said softly, Big Brother, do you think Mother is still here? Yi Xian was silent. Mother? Towards that woman. He was getting more and more blurry. At this moment, Yi Ling said softly, It doesn't matter if she's here or not. Anyway, I only have Big Brother. Big Brother is enough. Yi Xian gently rubbed his head against Yi Ling's little head. As long as you're safe and happy, Big Brother is willing to do anything. Under the starry sky, the two siblings leaned against each other quietly. The next day. At daybreak, Yi Xian went to the back of the mountain and continued to cultivate. Not only did he cultivate, but he also cultivated Imperial Sword. He could already control the sword, but he was not proficient enough. What he needed to do now was to cultivate this Imperial Sword technique to the extreme. Baize and Mo Yinchi were also cultivating crazily. For the two of them, the pressure was very great. They came to Zhanglan Academy, just like Yi Xian, for some special reasons. No matter what the reason was, they had now integrated into this academy and had a sense of belonging. And the two of them were very clear about the current situation of this academy. If they were not strong, they could be killed by Kuraki Academy at any time. Cultivate. Cultivate with their lives on the line. And a few days later, outside the Imperial City, 3 young men in ink-white robes suddenly galloped over. The 3 of them were extremely fast, and the pedestrians on the road all gave way. In front of the city gate, seeing that the 3 of them had no intention of slowing down, a soldier hurriedly shouted, Who are you? The 3 of them did not slow down. Seeing this scene, the soldier's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly retreated. Just like that, the 3 of them directly rushed into the city. Soon, a group of soldiers blocked in front of the 3 of them. A middle-aged man glared at the 3 of them, Fast horses are not allowed in the city, the 3 of you. At this moment, the young man in the lead suddenly jumped down from his horse. In the next moment, the young man suddenly disappeared. In an instant, a muffled sound rang out, and the middle-aged man was directly sent flying. Seeing this scene, the soldiers were furious and were about to attack, but at this moment, an angry shout suddenly came from the side. Impudent! As the voice fell, an old man appeared in front of the group of soldiers. The old man glanced at the group of soldiers coldly. Can't you see? They are all students of my Kuraki Academy. Kuraki Academy. The soldiers' expressions changed slightly, and they did not dare to attack. The old man turned to look at the three behind him. Where are the three of you from? The young man in the lead said indifferently, Tang Empire. Tang Empire. Hearing this, the soldiers' expressions suddenly became a little ugly. The Tang Empire was the enemy of the Jiang Empire. The old man nodded. Please return to the academy with me. The young man in the lead shook his head. There's no need. Where's Yi Xian? The old man hesitated for a moment and said, It's better to give it further thought. The three of you, give it further thought? The young man in the lead said coldly, If we give it further thought, then we probably won't even be able to get any scraps. Don't waste time and just tell me where Yi Xian is. Once we take his head, the three of us will be able to return to the empire. The old man glanced at the three of them. That fellow, Yi Xian, isn't an ordinary person. He's at Sanglan Academy. Right at this moment, the middle-aged man who was blasted flying earlier suddenly stood up, and he gazed at the young man in the lead. Yi Xian is at Sanglan Academy. If you don't know the way, then we'll take you there. The young man in the lead said indifferently, Lead the way. The middle-aged man turned around to glance at the others, and then he roared furiously, Give the order for all brothers to have an hour of rest. Go cheer for me at Sanglan Academy, and I'll break the legs of anyone who doesn't come. Chapter 78. Cheer. The middle-aged man led the three Tang Kingdom's Kuraki students towards Sanglan Academy, and behind them was a group of soldiers from the state of Jianghu. Besides the soldiers from the state of Jianghu, there was also a large group of spectators. Moreover, more and more people were joining in. All of these people had come to cheer for Sanglan Academy. Originally, these people didn't care about the battle between Kuraki Academy and Sanglan Academy. Or perhaps, they wished for nothing more than for the two academies to fight to the death. But it was different now. Because the people who had come were actually from the state of Tang. The state of Tang. The mortal enemies of the state of Jianghu. How many people from the state of Jianghu had died at the hands of the state of Tang during the war? Now, the Kuraki students from the state of Tang had actually come to the state of Jianghu. At this moment, practically everyone was on the side of Sanglan Academy. This was no longer a battle between academies, but a battle between two countries. The expression of the old man from Kuraki Academy instantly turned slightly unsightly when he witnessed this scene. At this moment, he suddenly felt that allowing the students from the state of Tang to come to the state of Jianghu was a huge mistake. Kuraki Academy was used to being superior, and they didn't care about what others thought. Thus, they neglected the relationship between the state of Jianghu and the state of Tang. Or perhaps it could be said that they didn't care about the thoughts of the people at the bottom of the hierarchy. However, they'd never imagined that their actions would incur the wrath of the masses. The old man hesitated for a moment before he hurried back to Kuraki Academy. He felt that this matter had to be dealt with seriously. Otherwise, Kuraki Academy would lose the support of the people in the state of Jianghu. Meanwhile, the group of soldiers led the three Kuraki students towards Sanglan Academy. The three Kuraki students had indifferent expressions, or perhaps their eyes were filled with disdain and arrogance. In next to no time, the group arrived at the foot of Sanglan Academy's mountain. At the foot of the mountain, they saw a little girl carrying a basket that contained some wild vegetables. This little girl was Yi Ling, who'd come down the mountain to gather wild vegetables. Yi Ling was slightly stunned when she saw the group of people. She didn't run because old man Ji had said that it was safe at the foot of the mountain. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man who led the group of soldiers suddenly walked over to Yi Ling. Little girl, is Yi Xian here? Yi Ling blinked. Why are you looking for him? The middle-aged man pointed at the 3 karate students not far away. These 3 are from the Tang Empire. They want to challenge Yi Xian. We're here to cheer for them. Yi Ling looked at the 3 students from Karaki Academy, then turned around and shouted towards the mountain, "Brother, the people from Karaki Academy are here again." Everyone, at this moment, a green-robed man flashed over from the mountain. The person who came was Yi Xian. Yi Xian's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the foot of the mountain, but he did not stop. Seeing Yi Xian, the leader of the 3 Karaki students sneered and took a step forward. "So you're Yi Xian. I'm a student of the Tang Empire's Karaki College, Li." Right at this moment, Yi Xian's speed suddenly rose explosively, and he traversed around 30 m in just the blink of an eye to arrive in front of the man who spoke. At the same time, a strand of light flashed. Hiss! The man hadn't even finished speaking when his figure stiffened on the spot. A light breeze blew by. Hiss! The man's head suddenly fell off his neck. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Everyone here was dumbstruck. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly dodged to the left, and he slashed horizontally with his sword. Hiss! The head of a Karaki student instantly flew into the air. Meanwhile, the last Karaki student had finally recovered from his shock, and he turned around and fled. Yi Xian didn't pursue him, and he turned around and walked towards Yi Ling instead. However, the sword in his hands suddenly flew up and slashed behind him. Hiss! Hiss! The head of the fleeing student from Karaki Academy was pierced through by a sword. The sword carried a strand of blood behind it as it spun in the air, and then it flew back to Yi Xian. Yi Xian caught the sword with his right hand while he pulled Yi Ling with his left. "Come, let's go cook." As soon as he finished speaking, the brother and sister pair walked slowly up the mountain while everyone watched. Everyone at the foot of the mountain was dumbstruck. He died just like that? Instant kill? Before everyone could recover from their shock, Yi Xian had already vanished into the distance with his sister, Yi Ling. Swordsman. How amazing, Karaki Academy actually didn't want this fellow. Those fellows from Karaki Academy are really blind. Blind? I think they're stupid. Amongst the younger generation of Jianghu Kingdom, I'm afraid only Guoshuren can defeat Yi Xian. I heard that he's friends with Guoshuren. Alas, I told you that Guoshuren thinks highly of Yi Xian, so how could he be an ordinary person? See, I'm telling the truth, right? See what? I remember that you were the one who said Guoshuren misjudged him and that Yi Xian was trash. Soon, the news of Yi Xian instantly killing 3 Karaki Academy students spread throughout the imperial capital like a plague. At this moment, the people of the imperial capital were in an uproar. Yi Xian killed Karaki Academy students, but they were also from Tang Kingdom. Yi Xian instantly killing 3 people from Tang Kingdom was undoubtedly a great honor to the people of Jianghu Kingdom. More and more people were dissatisfied with Karaki Academy. Originally, the conflict between the 2 academies was an internal matter of Jianghu Kingdom, but Karaki Academy actually invited external help, and it was from Tang Kingdom. Although many people were unhappy with Karaki Academy, no one dared to publicly criticize them. No one dared to casually offend this colossus. It was worth mentioning that the foot of Tsanglan Academy's mountain was somewhat lively. Every day, some people would come to the foot of the mountain, including some women, as if they were waiting for something. Karaki Academy. In a large hall, Li Xuanzang sat at the head of the table. On both sides of him were the instructors and elders of Karaki Academy. They were all people with real power in Karaki Academy. Li Xuanzang said indifferently, all 3 of them are levitation realm, but none of them could withstand a single strike from Yi Xian. What do you think? The hall was silent. Everyone's expressions were slightly solemn. Even though those 3 from Tang Kingdom were inferior to Fenju, they weren't weak. However, they weren't even able to withstand a single strike of Yi Xian's. They were instantly killed. Yi Xian was only at the Qi resistance realm. This wasn't a challenge of surmounting realms, it was an instant kill. After a moment of silence, an old man stood out. This person's strength is probably only inferior to Nguesher. I suggest that we notify those students from other places and ask them not to rashly challenge this person and sacrifice their lives for nothing. Why should we notify them? Right at this moment, Li Xuanzang spoke indifferently. Let them continue challenging him. Everyone looked at Li Xuanzang with puzzled expressions. Li Xuanzang spoke indifferently. The more people he kills, the more enemies he'll make. Let him offend all of the 72 Kuraki academies in Azure Prefecture. Killing with a borrowed knife. No one here was stupid, so they naturally understood what Li Xuanzang meant. Li Xuanzang slowly closed his eyes. Since Fenju's death, only Bei Chen remained in the younger generation of Kuraki Academy. Just Bei Chen alone wouldn't be able to hold the fort. If they didn't have any outstanding geniuses to send to the Central Divine Prefecture, then the resources they obtained would definitely be reduced. That was undoubtedly lethal to Kuraki Academy. After all, they received assistance from the main academy every single year, and the assistance included cultivation techniques, martial techniques, spirit artifacts, but the precondition was that they had to send monstrous geniuses over. Geniuses. What did this era lack the most? Besides resources, it lacked geniuses. Kuraki Academy naturally had enemies in the Central Divine Prefecture, and it needed geniuses in order to prevent a power from falling into decline. However, they'd suffered heavy losses this time, and it could be said that they were at an absolute disadvantage when compared to the other academies. It was too late to foster new geniuses now, so the only way was to make the geniuses of the other academies suffer losses as well. Not only would it make Kuraki Academy become enemies, but it would also exhaust the geniuses of those academies. Of course, if someone really killed Yi Xian, then it would naturally be for the best as well. In short, they just had to watch the battle from afar. Yi Xian. Li Xuanzang's face instantly turned gloomy when he thought of Yi Xian. Kuraki Academy's losses this time were extraordinarily heavy. Actually, that wasn't all. The thing that upset him the most was that Yi Xian had intended to join Kuraki Academy in the first place. If Kuraki Academy had accepted Yi Xian, then Kuraki Academy would have no chance of joining Kuraki Academy at all. Yet now, Kuraki Academy had Yi Xian, so it was an unknown factor. An unknown factor. Meanwhile, Li Xuanzang said, "Send my order. Anyone who's able to kill Yi Xian will be given 2 high-grade Earth-rank martial techniques, 2 Earth-rank cultivation techniques, and 1 million top-grade energy stones. Moreover, that person will even be able to enter the secret realm of Kuraki Academy to cultivate." The expressions of everyone here changed when they heard this. 2 high-grade Earth-rank martial techniques. 2 Earth-rank cultivation techniques. And 1 million top-grade energy stones. That was a huge loss. It was even sufficient to place a bounty on the head of a divine convergence realm expert. But Yi Xian was only at the chi-controlling realm. An old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "Dean, isn't this price a little too great?" Great? Li Xuanzang glanced coldly at the old man. If he doesn't die, then he'll definitely become a great enemy of our Kuraki Academy. Our academy will definitely do its best to deal with him now. We can't underestimate him at all. Otherwise, we'll definitely die a graveless death in the future. If one couldn't rope in a genius, then the best method was to destroy that genius. Moreover, Yi Xian was a genius of Kuraki Academy. He didn't want Kuraki Academy to have another swordsman at the Sword Master or Sword Emperor realm as an enemy in the future. The Sword Master. The Sword Emperor. Li Xuanzang's expression gradually turned gloomy when he thought up to here. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly walked swiftly into the hall. "Dean, Yi Xian, he's here." Everyone here was stunned when they heard this. Yi Xian is here? A man stood with a sword in hand at the foot of Xiao Dao, and a group of students from Kuraki Academy were standing not too far away from him. All of them had vigilant expressions on their faces. The man raised his head to gaze at them. "Don't be nervous. I'm just here to practice my calligraphy." As soon as he finished speaking, he started to swing his sword. In next to no time, a row of large words appeared on the ground in front of him. Hit me. Come at me. Chapter 79. The expressions of the students from Kuraki Academy turned extremely unsightly when they heard this. This was a blatant insult to Kuraki Academy. Some of the younger students were about to charge over when Li Xuanzang and the others appeared. Li Xuanzang threw a cold look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. He was about to speak, but Yi Xian turned around and left. He walked very quickly and vanished in the blink of an eye. Another line of words appeared behind Yi Xian, over 100 students, but none of them have balls. Li Xuanzang's expression was extremely gloomy when he saw this. The group of Kuraki Academy students were so angry that their faces turned red. This was too fucking humiliating. Some students were about to charge at Yi Xian, but they were stopped by the instructors. Li Xuanzang glanced coldly at the students from Kuraki Academy. Return to the mountain. The students didn't dare to disobey him and walked back to the mountain unwillingly. A woman stared fixedly at Yi Xian's back. Why didn't you let me attack? It was Bei Chen. Ku Mu was standing beside Bei Chen. Ku Mu shook his head. I'm afraid that only the Inguesher who has left the Jiang country can suppress him. Bei Chen fell silent. Her strength was on par with Fenju. If Yi Xian could kill Fenju, then he could kill her as well. Ku Mu glanced at Yi Xian who had vanished. He actually didn't die that day. This person is too mysterious. He turned to look at Bei Chen. You can't go look for him in private. Leave everything to the academy. Bei Chen remained silent. After Yi Xian left Kuraki Academy, he didn't stroll around. Instead, he prepared to return to Tsanglan Academy. He'd snuck into Kuraki Academy this time entirely because he couldn't stand the sight of Kuraki Academy, and he wanted to discuss them. Of course, if it was possible, he wanted to kill a few people as well. Ever since Kuraki Academy kidnapped his younger sister, he hated the academy to the extreme. If he were to bump into a student of Kuraki Academy on the street right now, he wouldn't hesitate to rush up and beat him to death. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In front of a house not far to his right, there was a little girl in a black dress squatting there. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her black dress was a little special, with a white skull flower painted on it. The little girl was carving a small piece of wood. Her technique was a little clumsy, and it was a little strenuous for her to carve. At this moment, the little girl suddenly looked up at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian clearly saw the little girl's appearance. In terms of appearance, the little girl was not particularly good-looking. On the contrary, she was somewhat gloomy, especially her eyes. They gave off a very uncomfortable feeling, as if one look from her would kill them. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then he walked in front of the little girl. He squatted down and took the wood and carving knife from the little girl's hands. He smiled and said, "What do you want to carve?" The little girl glanced at Yi Xian, and then she pointed at the eaves in the distance. Yi Xian looked up and saw a pitch-black bird there. The bird was slightly strange, and it only had one leg. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he started to carve quickly. Not long after, a lifelike bird appeared in front of the little girl. Carving. Actually, he liked to carve when he had nothing to do in the past. Because when they were young, the two of them were poor, and Yi Ling sometimes wanted toys. Naturally, he couldn't afford any toys, so he carved some small things for Yi Ling, and he was able to make Yi Ling happy every time. Over time, he could be considered a master carver. No matter what kind of bird, fish, or person it was, he could carve them lifelike. Of course, this skill was useless besides making Yi Ling happy. But to him, it was enough to make Yi Ling happy. Yi Xian handed the little bird in his hand to the girl in the black dress. He handed it to the black-dressed girl. "For you." The girl in the black dress took the wooden bird and looked at it. Then she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "When carving, you have to calm down. You can't rush it, the more anxious you are, the easier it is to make mistakes. As he spoke, he picked up a piece of wood beside the girl in the black dress, and then he started to carve quickly. Soon, a small wooden figure appeared in Yi Xian's hand. This small wooden figure was exactly the same as the girl in the black dress. When she saw the small wooden figure, the girl in the black dress was instantly attracted. Yi Xian handed the small wooden figure to the girl in the black dress and said with a smile, "For you." The girl in the black dress glanced at Yi Xian, and she took the small wooden figure, but she still didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled, and then he touched the girl in the black dress's head. This touch was actually subconscious, or it should be said that it was a habit, because he usually liked to touch Yi Ling's little head like this. At this moment, the girl in the black dress suddenly looked at him, and she just looked at him. Yi Xian suddenly felt slightly flustered, inexplicably flustered. He frowned slightly and hurriedly calmed himself down. The girl in the black dress suddenly retracted her gaze and looked at the small wooden figure in her hand. Yi Xian instantly felt much better. Yi Xian glanced at the girl in the black dress before him. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation of profound energy on her body, and she looked like an ordinary person. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. "Little girl, are you one of those extremely powerful and peerless experts?" The girl in the black dress glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian chuckled, and then he secretly looked around and said softly, "Let me tell you a secret." The girl in the black dress looked at Yi Xian and still didn't say anything. Yi Xian moved his wrist slightly, and the spirit elegance sword appeared in his hand. The girl in the black dress glanced at the spirit elegance sword, and there was no fluctuation in her eyes. Yi Xian pointed at himself and said mysteriously, "Swordsman, I'm the great swordsman." Impressive, right? The girl in the black dress blinked, and her expression was a little strange. Yi Xian subconsciously rubbed the girl's little head again, and then said with a smile, "I still have something to do, so I'll be leaving first." With that said, he got up and walked into the distance. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared from the sight of the black-dressed girl. The girl in the black dress retracted her gaze and looked at the small wooden figure in her hand. After a moment, she got up and looked at the one-legged bird not far away. "Did you sense it?" The one-legged bird shook its head. The girl in the black dress turned to look at the horizon and frowned slightly. "A sword immortal has appeared in the country of Jianghu, and we Dao protectors don't know anything about it." How ridiculous. With that said, she seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at the end of the street. At the end of the street, Yi Xian's figure had already disappeared, but the girl in the black dress could still see him. "This person offended master, I'll go kill him." At this moment, the one-legged bird was about to fly away. The girl in the black dress stretched out her hand, and the one-legged bird landed firmly in her palm. The girl in the black dress said indifferently, "This person's sword heart is clear, and his heart is kind. He is a promising talent. Don't touch him, and let him develop. In the future, if he is still as kind as he is today, and his sword heart is clear, we can nurture him well, and add another hero to our azure state." With that said, she turned and took a step forward. As soon as she took that step, she disappeared from sight. Yi Xian arrived at the foot of Tsanglan Academy's mountain. At this moment, a group of people surrounded him, and there were many women among them. Young Master Yi, a youth, walked in front of Yi Xian, and bowed respectfully. "I am the Yu family's heir, Yu Lin. Young Master Yi, there is a banquet today, and I would like to invite young Master Yi to participate." On the other side, another man hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, I would like to join Tsanglan Academy, please Yi." "Young Master Yi, are you really a swordsman?" "Young Master Yi, this little girl greets you. Are you really a swordsman? Show me a few moves." Yi Xian fled. Back mountain. Yi Xian came to the waterfall, and Baizhe was still cultivating. At this moment, Baizhe's body actually had a faint red luster. At this moment, Baizhe suddenly glanced at Yi Xian. "You don't cultivate?" Even his words were trembling. Yi Xian nodded, and said seriously, geniuses usually don't cultivate, like me. Bai Zai glared at Yi Xian. Go, farther. Yi Xian chuckled. At this moment, a strong wind came from his right. Yi Xian suddenly turned around, and punched out. Bang! A figure was blasted back, and at this moment, a cold light silently appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian dodged backwards, and dodged the cold light. At this moment, an afterimage appeared in front of him again, and at the same time, a black rod suddenly smashed down from above his head. Yi Xian clenched his right hand into a fist. Bang! A fist aura swept out from his body, and it was this fist aura that forced the rod to stop. Yi Xian punched out. However, the figure was already 30 meters away. This figure was Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi sized up Yi Xian. How did your fist become so powerful again? Yi Xian didn't speak, and he suddenly vanished on the spot. Seeing this scene, Mo Yinchi's expression changed slightly. He lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and his entire body instantly retreated 30 meters. At the same time, a flying knife flashed. Extremely fast. Bang! Yi Xian forcefully stopped, and he just stopped when another flying knife arrived in front of him. Right at this moment, a sword howl resounded, and then a flying sword slashed directly against the flying knife. Bang! The flying knife flew back to Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi chuckled, this flying knife of mine is formidable, right? Yi Xian suddenly looked at Mo Yinchi, and then he said, Elder Ji? Mo Yinchi turned around instinctively, yet there was no one behind him. Shit! Mo Yinchi's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly turned around. Bang! Along with a muffled bang, Mo Yinchi's figure was blasted flying, and he flew over 30 m away. On the ground, Mo Yinchi pointed angrily at Yi Xian. Yi Xian. You bastard. You actually played tricks. Are you even human? Yi Xian blinked, you can deceive me as well. Quickly tell me there's someone behind me. Mo Yinchi was infuriated to the point he almost spat blood, motherfucker. Chapter 80. Yi Xian shrugged and turned to leave. Behind him, Mo Yinchi turned to look at Bai Zai under the waterfall. Is this person shameless? Bai Zai nodded his head seriously. Mo Yinchi shook his head. I have never seen such a shameless person. At this moment, Bai Zai suddenly said, Are you done running? Hearing this, Mo Yinchi's expression changed. The next moment, he disappeared on the spot. In a courtyard. Old man Ji was lying on the recliner, drunk from the alcohol. Yi Xian suddenly appeared beside old man Ji. Yi Xian glanced at old man Ji and said, Old man Ji, I have something to discuss with you. Old man Ji opened his drowsy eyes and glanced at Yi Xian. Speak. Yi Xian thought for a moment. I want to break through to the airborne realm. Airborne realm. He had been stuck at the chi-controlling realm for a long time. Now, he felt that he had reached the limit of the chi-controlling realm and could break through to the airborne realm at any time. Unfortunately, he could not break through like a normal person. He had to find spiritual swords. And he might need more than one spiritual sword. If he reached the airborne realm, his strength in all aspects would increase greatly. Most importantly, he would be able to fly. At that time, he would try to combine with a sword and see if he could use sword kinesis. Sword kinesis flight. He could use sword kinesis now, but he could not use sword kinesis flight. This was a pity. Old man Ji nodded. Wanting to break through to the airborne realm is a good thing. Yi Xian hurriedly said, but, my body is a little special. If I want to break through to the airborne realm, I need spiritual swords. Old man Ji, buy me a dozen spiritual swords. Hey. Old man Ji, don't sleep. Wake up, damn it, in front of Yi Xian, old man Ji was already sleeping soundly. No matter how he called, he would not wake up. Seeing that old man Ji was pretending to sleep, Yi Xian was so angry that he almost pulled out his sword to kill him. However, when he thought of this old man's terrifying strength, he just thought about it. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned around. At the entrance of the courtyard, stood a woman. Jianghu. Jianghu glanced at Yi Xian. "Follow me." With that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian looked at old man Ji in front of him, shook his head and sighed. Shameless. After saying that, he followed her out. Jianghu brought Yi Xian to the back of the mountain. In a corner of the back of the mountain, there were two small halls. The weeds around the two halls were almost as tall as an adult. It was very desolate. Jianghu brought Yi Xian to the front of a small hall. Yi Xian looked up and saw two huge words above the small hall, Martial Arts Hall. Jianghu said softly, "This place used to be the sacred land of my Tsanglan Academy." Yi Xian looked at the martial arts hall in front of him and asked, "Is there anything valuable inside?" Jianghu turned and glared at Yi Xian. "This is the Holy Land." Yi Xian rolled his eyes. "I only know that our academy is so poor that we can barely afford to eat now." Jianghu was silent for a moment and said softly, "Tsanglan Academy used to be very glorious, even more glorious than the current Karaki College." Yi Xian said, "Then how did it end up like this?" Jianghu shook her head. "Arrogance." "Arrogance?" Yi Xian didn't understand. Jianghu said softly, "When a faction reaches a certain level, like our Tsanglan Academy back then, even the royal family has to listen to us. Back then, we were unprecedentedly arrogant and didn't put anyone in our eyes. Naturally, we offended a lot of people. This is nothing. Back then, Tsanglan Academy missed a student." Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian and said, "The legend of Karaki College, Gu Qianchen. Back then, he was actually a student of our Tsanglan Academy." Yi Xian was taken aback, and then he asked, "Then why did you go to Karaki Academy?" Jianghu shook her head. "He was forced to leave." Finishing her sentence, she walked towards the martial arts hall. Whether it is a faction or a person, once they reach a certain level, they will become arrogant. Once a person becomes arrogant, they will lose themselves. It is the same for a faction. In the future, we also paid a painful price for our arrogance back then. As she spoke, she suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Yi Xian. Back then, during the final battle between the two academies, the older generation didn't make a move. Almost all the students of our Tsanglan Academy were slaughtered. That year, the Shaodao in Song Mountain was filled with the heads of our Tsanglan Academy students. Yi Xian was silent. This world was cruel. When he was in Azure City, several small worlds were fighting for the resources around Azure City. Weren't there frequent bloody battles? But for Tsanglan Academy to end up like this, it made him think of 4 words. Extreme prosperity leads to decline. No matter if it was a person or a faction, once they reached a certain level, they would become arrogant and lose themselves. To him, this was also a wake-up call. No matter how far one went in the future, one must not become arrogant. The two of them entered the main hall. Inside the main hall, there were 9 long pillars. Each pillar was 6 meters tall, and there were unknown runes drawn around them. Jianghu pointed at the 9 pillars. These 9 pillars were once the 9 Dao legacies, the legacies of the powerhouses of the Divine Central Continent's General Academy. Every year, new powerhouses would pass through these 9 pillars and pass on their martial arts here. When Tsanglan Academy declined, the General Academy completely abandoned this place. The legacies here have not appeared for many, many years. Saying this, she laughed self-deprecatingly. They must have completely forgotten about us. Yi Xian was silent. He didn't particularly care about what had happened back then. All he knew was that old man Ji of Tsanglan Academy had saved his sister and taken them in. This favor must be repaid. This was how Yi Xian lived. He would repay kindness with kindness and take revenge with enmity. Jianghu walked up to one of the pillars and suddenly drew her saber and slashed. Crack! The pillar shattered with a loud bang. Jianghu didn't stop there. Instead, she swung her saber swiftly, and in the next moment, all 9 pillars shattered with a loud bang. After the 9 pillars shattered, 9 crystals the size of fists appeared in the grand hall. What's this? Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Jianghu said softly, jade-grade spirit stones, the cornerstones of the 9 inheritance pillars. Each one should be able to sell for a good price, and they're the most valuable thing we have right now. Take them and sell them for swords. Saying this, she turned and left the martial arts hall. Inside the hall, Yi Xian gazed at the jade-grade spirit stones in front of him for a long time without saying anything. 15 minutes later, Yi Xian descended the mountain. In a certain courtyard, old man Ji sighed softly. Girl, that's your grandfather's wine money. Yi Xian headed straight for the Drunken Immortal Tavern. The Drunken Immortal Tavern was the largest merchant association in the imperial capital. If one wanted to buy or sell something, they could only come to them. At a certain street, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Not far in front of him stood a man. The man was dressed in a white brocade robe and held a feather fan in his hand. He had a graceful bearing. Yi Xian glanced at the man. From Kuraki Academy? The man smiled slightly. Yes, you are Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot. Before he arrived, a terrifying fist aura had already enveloped the man. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of shock in his eyes. He didn't dare to be careless. The folding fan in his hand spun slightly, and a sharp gust of wind slashed out like a blade. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, the 2 figures retreated rapidly. These 2 figures were Yi Xian and the man. But soon, Yi Xian stopped, and in the next moment, he appeared in front of the man again. The man's pupils constricted slightly. He swiftly closed his folding fan, and then flicked it upward, causing a ray of cold light to flash. Hiss! The sound of something tearing resounded. However, the man himself had retreated explosively by over 30 m. Yi Xian glanced at his fist, and there was a bloody mark on it. Yi Xian shook his hand, and then he slowly clenched his fist. Bang! The ground in front of Yi Xian instantly cracked apart, and then an invisible imposing aura swept towards the man like a storm. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. What a domineering fist aura! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly let go of the folding fan in his hand. In the next moment, the folding fan slashed down like a sharp blade. Hiss! An ear-piercing sound of something tearing resounded. The folding fan didn't just tear through the air, it tore through Yi Xian's imposing aura as well. However, Yi Xian had arrived in front of him, and Yi Xian didn't waste his breath and just smashed his fist forward. Force. It was very simple. Bang! The man retreated explosively by over 30 m while the folding fan was grabbed by Yi Xian. He'd intended to destroy it, but he noticed that it was actually a spirit artifact. He didn't hesitate to put the folding fan away. The man was speechless. After he put the folding fan away, Yi Xian gazed at the man. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. Looks like it won't be easy to take your head. You. Right at this moment, his voice suddenly stopped abruptly. Because Yi Xian had charged over and arrived in front of him. Another punch. However, this punch was utterly different from the punch from before, and the might of this punch was at least a few times stronger than the punch from before. Such a powerful contrast caused the man's expression to change drastically. He was just about to counterattack when a peerlessly formidable fist aura enveloped him. I'll blast your head apart with a single punch. The might of this punch instantly caused the man to feel despair. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! The man's head exploded, and Yi Xian was already several meters behind the man. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. I'll kill every student of Kuraki Academy I see. After he finished speaking, he walked towards the distance. Ever since the students of Karaki Academy had captured his younger sister, he could be said to hate this academy to the extreme. They could touch him, but they absolutely couldn't touch his younger sister. In the surroundings, some of the spectators looked at each other with shock in their eyes. The young man with the folding fan was at least a peak levitation realm expert. However, he'd been killed by a single punch from Yi Xian just like that. Somewhere, 3 men stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who was leaving in the distance. As for these 3 people, they were also students of Karaki Academy from elsewhere. After a moment, the man in a luxurious robe shook his head, returned to the country. The man beside the luxurious robe said in a low voice, "Return to the country just like that? If we kill him, there's an earth-grade martial technique and a supreme-grade spirit stone." The luxurious robe glanced coldly at the man who spoke. "Do you have the life to take it?" The man's expression was somewhat ugly. The luxurious robe turned his head and glanced at the headless corpse in the distance. "This person's strength isn't the slightest bit weaker than the 3 of us, but he couldn't even take a single punch." As he spoke, he turned his head and glanced in the direction of Tsang Mountain. "This Yi Xian isn't an ordinary genius at all. This country of Jianghu's Karaki Academy wants to kill him with a borrowed knife. We won't participate in this muddy water, nor do we have the strength to participate in it. Let's go." After he finished speaking, the man turned around and left without hesitation. After a moment of hesitation, the remaining 2 men also followed suit. Earth-grade martial technique and cultivation technique were very tempting, but one had to be alive to take it. Life was the most important thing. On the other side, a man in a black robe glanced at the corpse on the ground and chuckled, "Your strength isn't bad." As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body disappeared on the spot. At the end of the street, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In front of him stood a black-robed man. The black-robed man gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "You said that you would kill students of Karaki Academy on sight?" As he spoke, he waved his hand. "I'm from Karaki Academy as well. Why don't you give it a try?" Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. The corners of the man's mouth curled up slightly, and in the blink of an eye, a violent aura suddenly swept out from within him. Is this the Nether Passage realm? No, this is Half-Step Nether Passage. Someone exclaimed in shock. No wonder he's so confident. He's actually halfway into the Nether Passage realm. Right at this moment, the howl of a sword resounded. A single strike to decide life and death. This time, Yi Xian had directly utilized his strongest attack. At the moment this attack appeared, the black-robed man's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. In the blink of an eye, the profound energy within his body surged madly. At the same time, he suddenly punched forward. Bang! A strand of violent energy surged out from his fist, and it even emanated raging flames. Most importantly, this punch actually contained fist intent. A wave of exclamations resounded once more when they saw the fist intent. Fist intent. This meant that the black-robed young man was very likely to become a martial Dao Grandmaster. Or rather, he was already a quasi-martial Dao Grandmaster. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword arrived. A moment of silence ensued. Hiss. A head suddenly flew into the sky. It was the black-robed man's head. Behind the black-robed man, Yi Xian opened his palm. An array of sword light fell into his hand. The sword light dissipated, and it was the exquisite spirit sword. He sheathed the sword and quickly walked towards the distance. He would absolutely not fight for something that could be resolved with a single strike of the sword. So, he used his strongest move. Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. Another instant kill? Another instant kill? The minds of the spectators in the surroundings and some of the students of Karaki Academy that were hiding in the shadows had gone blank. A half-step Nether Passage quasi-martial Dao Grandmaster was instantly killed just like that? This wasn't a victory, but an instant kill. An instant kill with a single strike of the sword. Moreover, many people hadn't been able to see that strike clearly. All they saw was a ray of light flash by, and then the black-robed man's head flew into the air. Exactly what level has Yi Xian attained? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked back. Under the gazes of the crowd, he walked up to the corpse of the black-robed man, and then he took a bag from the man's waist. Subsequently, he turned around and left. Chapter 81. Poor. Extremely poor. That was exactly what Yi Xian was feeling right now. While he was in Two World City, he'd found out that Dao Yi's spiritual weapon was worth at least 2 million gold coins. Moreover, the sword might be even more expensive. Now, he was so poor that he wanted to rob someone. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive at the Inn of Indulgence. As soon as he produced his violet card, he was immediately invited into a luxurious room, and it was an old man who received him. The old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, do you have any instructions for me?" Yi Xian nodded, and then he produced the 9 jade-grade spirit stones. "How much can I sell them for?" Jade-grade spirit stones. There was a trace of surprise in the old man's eyes. There aren't many of them in the country of Jianghu. As he spoke, he pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "A single jade-grade spirit stone is worth around 500,000 gold coins, 500,000 gold coins." Yi Xian pondered deeply for a moment, and then he said, "At most, it's only 4,500,000 gold coins?" The old man nodded. Yi Xian asked another question, "How much does a single spiritual sword cost?" The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "At least 3 million gold coins, and there might not be any on the market." Yi Xian laughed bitterly when he heard this. Now he knew why there were so few swordsmen. Damn it. This isn't something that ordinary people can afford to cultivate. A single spiritual sword costs 3 million gold coins. Not to mention a single person, even some great clans can't produce that much gold coins. Besides that, there's also the swordsman's sword technique, and all of that would probably be an enormous sum of money. Within the room, Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he withdrew a huge pile of things. All of them were spoils of war that he'd obtained from killing people, and there were all sorts of things. The most valuable amongst them was naturally the spiritual weapon that he'd just obtained. The old man's gaze paused on the fan for a moment, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, forgive me for being blunt, but only this fan is worth a bit. The rest aren't worth much." Yi Xian nodded. "Together, can we buy 2 spirit swords?" The old man was in a difficult position. At this moment, he was slightly taken aback. In the next moment, he took a look outside the door and then looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi wants 2 spiritual swords." Yi Xian nodded. The old man smiled. "It's fine. Young Master Yi is our honored guest. We will think of a way for young Master Yi. Please wait a moment, young Master Yi." After that, he put away Yi Xian's things and left the private room. About an hour later, the old man returned to the private room. In the old man's arms were 2 black boxes. The old man walked in front of Yi Xian. "I've made young Master Yi wait for a long time." As he said that, he handed the 2 boxes to Yi Xian. "These are 2 spiritual swords. Please have a look, young Master Yi." Yi Xian opened one of the boxes. Inside the box was a sword that was about 3 feet long. The sword was about 2 fingers wide and very sharp. Most importantly, this sword had a trace of spirituality. It was undoubtedly a spiritual sword. Yi Xian closed the box and then looked at the old man. "My money shouldn't be enough to buy these 2 swords." The old man smiled. "Young Master Yi is my Drunken Immortal restaurant's honored guest. This little convenience is something my Drunken Immortal restaurant can give." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, "Thank you." This was the Drunken Immortal restaurant's goodwill, so he naturally wouldn't refuse. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't refuse, the old man's smile became even more brilliant. "Also, young Master Yi must be careful of Kuraki Academy. According to what we know, Kuraki Academy has the intention to kill young Master Yi. My drunken Immortal restaurant has already investigated the incident that happened to young Master Yi on the cloud ship. It was Kuraki Academy's doing. And they will surely not let it go. Young Master Yi, you must be careful when you're outside. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you for telling me. If your honorable restaurant has any other news, please let me know. I'll be eternally grateful. The old man smiled. Of course. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Farewell. With that said, he carried the 2 spiritual swords and turned to leave. After Yi Xian left, a black-robed old man appeared in the private room. This person was the 9th floor master of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. The 9th floor master glanced at the direction that Yi Xian had left in and said, If I'm not in the imperial capital in the future, try to make things convenient for this person. Also, pay attention to Kuraki Academy. If you discover anything, you can sell this young man a favor. The old man bowed slightly. Understood. The 9th floor master slowly closed his eyes. Kuraki Academy, continue to court death. After Yi Xian left the Drunken Immortal restaurant, he couldn't wait to rush towards Zhanglan Academy. 2 spiritual swords. Based on his current condition, if he was able to devour these 2 spiritual swords, he had an 80% chance of reaching the higher sky realm. Once he reached the higher sky realm, not only would his strength in all aspects improve greatly, most importantly, he would be able to attempt sword kinesis flight. If he was able to achieve sword kinesis flight and fly around the imperial capital, how cool would that be? Thinking of this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth couldn't help but curl into a brilliant smile. Yi Xian increased his speed. Just as he was passing through a narrow street, he suddenly stopped. The street was only a few feet wide and there were houses and buildings on both sides. Most importantly, there wasn't a single person on the street. Something's not right. Yi Xian prepared to retreat. Although he was confident, he wouldn't jump into a trap knowing that it was a trap. At this moment, behind him, a sound of wind breaking could be heard. Yi Xian squinted his eyes, turned around and threw a punch. Bam! Yi Xian took a few steps back and with every step he took, the ground beneath his feet instantly exploded. Yi Xian looked at his own fist. His fist was already red and there were bloodstains. He lifted his head and looked into the distance. Not far in front of him, stood a man. The man was around 20 years old and his body was extremely burly, not much different from Bai Zai's. On his right fist, there was a thick black metal glove. Spiritual weapon. Looking at the black metal glove, Yi Xian's eyes had a strange glint. The man had a ferocious expression. He glanced at Yi Xian with a ferocious smile on his face. Yi Xian was about to attack when he suddenly turned around. Not far behind him stood 2 men. The man on the left wore long cotton clothes and held a spear in his hand. The tip of the spear was like a cold star. The man on the right had short hair and held a crescent moon blade. The blade was pitch black and thick, and the blade was extremely thin. There were 3 black iron rings on the back of the blade. All 3 of them were in the levitation realm. No, it should be said that all 3 of them had reached the half-step ethereal opening realm. At this moment, the man in cotton clothes with the spear in his hands suddenly said, "The 3 of us saw you fight earlier. I never expected that besides Guoshuren, there would be a monster like you in Jiang country." As he spoke, he walked slowly towards Yi Xian. "In a one-on-one battle, the 3 of us aren't a match for you, so," right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward. This charge caused him to arrive around 3 m away from the man with the spear. However, his expression suddenly changed, and he dodged to the right in the next moment. There was a black arrow stuck in his shoulder. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. A woman in tight black clothes was standing on the roof of a house in the distance. She held a bow in her hand and carried a quiver of arrows on her back. It wasn't 3 people, but 4. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the woman on the roof, and then he broke the arrow in his shoulder. Right at this moment, the sound of wind being torn apart resounded abruptly from behind him. Subsequently, the robust man appeared behind Yi Xian, and he smashed his fist towards Yi Xian's head. His fist was like a ferocious tiger that had left its cage, and it carried a domineering aura that seemed capable of devouring its enemies. A wisp of a ferocious smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth, and then he suddenly turned around and swung his fist. A punch to the head. The ground beneath his feet instantly cracked apart, and it wasn't just his feet that cracked apart, even the walls on both sides of him cracked apart. Fist against fist. Bang! An explosion resounded as the robust man's black gloves split apart. At the same time, he retreated by over 10 m, and every step he took left a deep hole in the ground. The robust man glanced at his right hand, and his entire right hand was trembling violently. At this moment, there was astonishment in the robust man's eyes. He mainly cultivated the body, and he rarely lost to anyone in the same realm of cultivation in terms of physical strength. But the person before him was a swordsman. After he blasted the robust man back with a single punch, Yi Xian was just about to follow up with another attack. However, right at this moment, he suddenly turned around, and a spear had arrived in front of him. The tip of the spear was spinning, and it carried a sharp spear light. Yi Xian's figure dodged to the side and missed this spear strike. However, right at this moment, the spear suddenly swept horizontally. Yi Xian wasn't able to dodge in time, and he could only raise his arms to block in front of him. Bang! Yi Xian was directly sent flying into the wall by the force of the spear, and at this moment, a man suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian, and then a long saber slashed down fiercely. The momentum of this saber was complete, and its power was unparalleled. There was no time to dodge, because this saber and the spear were connected too closely. Yi Xian's hands suddenly clasped together. Bang! This time, his hands directly clasped the long saber, but his feet sank deep into the ground. At this moment, a spear suddenly stabbed at his abdomen. Yi Xian released the long saber and rolled to the side. Bang bang! The ground where he was originally standing was directly cut into a deep ravine by the long saber, and the wall behind him was instantly penetrated. After dodging the spear and the saber, Yi Xian had yet to stand firm when an overbearing force suddenly attacked him from behind. Yi Xian turned around, and in front of him was that burly man. The burly man leaped into the air, and a fist smashed fiercely towards Yi Xian's head. The man's fist flashed with a pitch-black fist light. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth suffused with a hint of savagery. He did not retreat, but also blasted a punch upwards. Another head-on clash. Still a punch to the head. This punch not only had fighting spirit, but also a powerful and overbearing fist momentum. The moment the two fists collided. Bang! The burly man's entire body was instantly sent flying several feet away to the ground. Yi Xian was also shaken to the point where he retreated several feet. And at this moment, there was a faint sound of wind breaking. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically, and he dodged to the side, but it was still a little too late. There was an arrow stuck in his right shoulder. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the eaves in the distance. The woman's right hand pulled the bow into a full moon shape, and an arrow was aimed at him, ready to shoot. The woman in black looked coldly at Yi Xian, and just as she was about to release the tail of the arrow, she suddenly turned around, and a cold light slashed down from above her head. The woman in black's pupils constricted slightly, and with a light tap of her toes, her entire body directly floated to the other side of the house. In the place where she had been standing, stood a woman in a rainbow-colored dress. Jianghu. At the same time, two figures suddenly landed on the left and right sides of Yi Xian. The people who came were Mo Yinqi and Bai Zai. 4 against 4. Yi Xian glanced at the two of them, and just as he was about to make a move, Mo Yinqi suddenly stopped Yi Xian with his right hand. Wait! Yi Xian and Bai Zai looked at Mo Yinqi, and Mo Yinqi snorted. Previously, you were the one in the limelight, and the girls in the imperial capital only know you, Yi Xian. Don't make a move now, and watch my performance. Let me deal with them. As he spoke, he rushed towards the man in plain clothes and the other person in the distance. And in the distance, the two people also disappeared at the same time. There was a moment of silence. Bang! Mo Yinchi smashed heavily in front of Yi Xian and Bai Zai, and a trace of blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. Bai Zai looked at Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi, are you showing us how to be beaten? Chapter 82. Yi Xian walked over to Mo Yinchi and pulled him up. Mo Yinchi wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth and gazed at the two people in the distance. Very strong. Very strong. Yi Xian nodded. He'd fought them earlier, and even he wasn't 100% confident in his ability to defeat them. There were many geniuses and monstrous geniuses in this world. Moreover, Kuraki Academy had offered such generous conditions, so many people would definitely be tempted. Not to mention others, even he himself was slightly tempted. An earth-rank martial technique was enough to buy numerous spirit swords. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and glanced at Bai Zai and Mo Yinchi. Both of you pick one. Bai Zai turned around and looked at the robust man in the distance. Bai Zai didn't waste his breath and charged directly at the robust man. The robust man refused to show weakness, and he leaped up and shot explosively towards Bai Zai. Bang! 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 In next to no time, numerous explosions resounded behind Yi Xian and Mo Yinchi. Yi Xian turned his head to look at Mo Yinchi. Mo Yinchi went silent for a moment, and then he looked at the man who held a crescent blade nearby. In the next moment, his entire body charged out like a gust of wind. In the distance, the man with the crescent blade had no fear on his face, and he leaped up and slashed fiercely forward. Hiss! This slash slashed through the air. Mo Yinchi had already appeared behind the man, and the man's reaction was extremely swift. He turned around and slashed with his blade. On the roof, Jianghu leaped up and charged towards the black-clothed woman, and the black-clothed woman dodged backwards repeatedly. At the same time, numerous arrows shot towards Jianghu incessantly, and Jianghu didn't dare be careless when facing these arrows. In the small alley, only Yi Xian and the plain-clothed man had yet to fight. The plain-clothed man glanced at Yi Xian. We'll leave the imperial capital. Yi Xian shook his head. If you said that before my brothers arrived, would have agreed. But now, it's too late. As soon as his voice fell, Yi Xian suddenly leaped forward. This leap had the momentum of a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. The spear-wielding man gripped the spear tightly in his right hand. The spear in his hand trembled violently, and the ground beneath his feet began to crack. After a moment of silence, the man thrust his spear upwards. On the tip of the spear, spear light flickered and a powerful force poured out. The walls on both sides of the man shattered. Right at this moment, a ray of light flashed, and then the surroundings suddenly fell silent. Yi Xian was already not far behind the man. A drop of blood slowly dripped from the tip of his elegant sword. Yi Xian turned to look in the distance. At this moment, Bai Zai was engaged in a fierce battle with the burly man. Both of them cultivated their bodies, so when they fought, their fists naturally landed on each other's flesh. However, Bai Zai clearly had the upper hand. The burly man retreated continuously, and his body was covered in cracks. On the contrary, Bai Zai was becoming more and more ferocious as he fought. Yi Xian sized up Bai Zai, and he was slightly shocked in his heart. Or rather, it should be said that he was shocked. If it was just based on his body alone, even if he cultivated to the concealed realm, he wouldn't have any advantage against Bai Zai in terms of his body alone. If he hadn't cultivated to the golden body realm, he probably wouldn't even be able to take a single punch from Bai Zai. Bang! At this moment, the burly man in the distance was sent flying. Tens of feet away, the burly man landed heavily on the ground. Just as he was about to get up, Bai Zai suddenly descended from the sky and stepped on the burly man's head. Bang! The burly man's head sank into the ground, and his body twitched for a while before he stopped moving. Bai Zai seized the burly man's black iron fists, and then he snatched the pouch from the burly man's waist. After that, he walked over to Yi Xian, waved the black gloves in his hands, and grinned. A spiritual weapon. Yi Xian nodded. It's worth at least 2 million gold coins. Bai Zai grinned. I finally know why you like to fight. Remember to bring me along when you fight in the future. Yi Xian was speechless. Bang! Suddenly, an explosion resounded from afar. Yi Xian and Bai Zai turned to look. Not far away, Mo Yinshi was blasted back tens of meters. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly, and he and Bai Zai were about to attack when Mo Yinshi suddenly said, "You guys watch, I'll do it myself." Yi Xian and Bai Zai hesitated for a moment, and in the end, they didn't choose to attack. They believed in Mo Yinshi. If this fellow really couldn't win, he would definitely run faster than anyone else. Suddenly, Mo Yinshi formed a seal with his hands, and in the blink of an eye, a figure appeared behind the man with the blade. It was Mo Yinshi, but Mo Yinshi was still at his original position. Two Mo Yunkies. Both Yi Xian and Bai Zai were stunned by this scene. It wasn't just them, even the man with the blade was stunned. Right at this moment, two rays of cold light flashed. Flying daggers. Two flying daggers shot towards the man with the blade, and they were extremely swift. Even Yi Xian and Bai Zai weren't able to see their trajectories clearly. The man's pupils constricted slightly because he noticed that both of them were actually real. He didn't have the time to think about anything else, and he suddenly swung his blade horizontally. Hiss! A crescent-shaped ray of light surged forward, and it forcefully stopped the two flying daggers. However, right at this moment, another flying dagger flashed. In the blink of an eye. Hiss! The knife-wielding man's body stiffened. An inch-long throwing knife was stuck in his throat. Yi Xian and Bai Zai gazed at Mo Yinshi. At this moment, Mo Yinshi's countenance was slightly pale. Yi Xian walked over to him. "Are you all right?" Mo Yinshi hurriedly straightened his back. "Do I look like I'm not all right?" Yi Xian patted Mo Yinshi lightly on the shoulder. "Go back and have a good rest." As he spoke, he picked up the man's blade and the money pouch on his waist, and then he passed it to Mo Yinshi. "This blade is a spirit artifact as well, and it's worth at least 2 million gold coins. Do you want it? If you don't." Mo Yinshi grabbed the blade and the money pouch, and then he glared at Yi Xian. "Why are you acting like a bandit?" Yi Xian was speechless. 2 million gold coins. Mo Yinshi's eyes were filled with shock as he glanced at the blade in his hand. After all, even though there were spirit artifacts in his original clan, they weren't something that he could obtain. Moreover, 2 million gold coins was a huge sum of money to his clan. Mo Yinshi sighed lightly. "Bandit Yi, I finally know why you like to fight. You can get rich by fighting." As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. "The next time you fight, please call me along, or else we won't be brothers." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the three of them suddenly raised their heads and looked at the rooftop in the distance. On the rooftop, Jianghu was knocked back by an arrow, and the woman in black didn't attack again. Instead, she turned around and flew into the distance. Her speed was extremely fast, like a goshawk. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "Kill." As he spoke, he stomped his right foot on the ground, and his entire body flew into the air. But very quickly, he landed again. Mo Yinshi and Bai Zai looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian's expression was a little awkward, because he was only at the chi-controlling realm, and couldn't fly at all. Bai Zai looked at Mo Yinshi. The fastest person in the field was definitely Mo Yinshi, but Mo Yinshi shook his head. "I consumed too much energy just now, and can't increase my speed at all." Yi Xian nodded. "I'm fine." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something, and he looked at Mo Yinshi and Bai Zai. "Why did the two of you come here?" Mo Yinshi spoke in a low voice. "It was Old Man Ji who informed us that you were being ganged up on, and then we came." When he spoke up to here, He hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Bandit Yi, to be honest, even though your strength is only slightly inferior to mine, you should know by now how many people want to kill you. If you want to leave the mountain next time, it's better to call the three of us along. The more people, the more insurance. Yi Xian was speechless. Bai Zai glanced at Imo Yinchi. Both of you are shameless. He knew that Yi Xian was very shameless, and now it seemed like Imo Yinchi's was extremely shameless as well. Imo Yinchi glared at Bai Zai. People like you won't live long in chivalrous novels. Bai Zai glanced at Imo Yinchi. Believe it or not, I'll send you flying. Imo Yinchi retreated a few feet, and he waved at Bai Zai. Come over here. Bai Zai's eyes twitched, and he directly ignored Imo Yinchi, and then looked at Yi Xian. Let's go back. Yi Xian nodded, and he looked at Jianghu, who was on the eaves. Foodie Ji. Oh no, great beauty Ji, let's go. Foodie Ji. Jianghu glanced at Yi Xian, and his expression was unfriendly. Yi Xian secretly cursed, and he was stunned. Then he pointed at Imo Yinchi, who was not far away. He said that you're a foodie. Imo Yinchi was stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian turned to look at Bai Zai. It was Imo Yinchi who said it, right? Bai Zai glanced at Yi Xian, and at this moment, Yi Xian opened his mouth. Do you want to eat? There was only the movement of his lips, no sound. Bai Zai obviously understood what he meant. He turned to look at Imo Yinchi, who was not far away. He said it. Damn! Imo Yinchi jumped, and at this moment, a saber light suddenly descended from the sky, directly towards Imo Yinchi. Imo Yinchi's expression changed drastically, and he turned to run. You two bastards. Beside Yi Xian, Bai Zai suddenly said, I want to eat roasted chicken tonight. Yi Xian nodded, no problem. Just like that, the two of them walked into the distance side by side. After a while, the two of them came to a dense forest, and after passing through this dense forest, they reached the foot of Mount Azure Billow. At this moment, two explosions suddenly sounded in the dense forest, and soon, two figures retreated from the dense forest. It was Imo Yinchi and Jianghu. At this moment, there was blood at the corner of their mouths, and not only that, there were two arrows stuck in Jianghu's shoulders, and there was also an arrow stuck in Imo Yinchi's right thigh. Their bodies weren't as strong as Yi Xian's, so the arrows had directly pierced through them. Yi Xian and Bai Zai's expressions changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they hurriedly charged over. Meanwhile, a man and a woman walked out from the dense forest. The woman was the black-clothed woman that had fled earlier. On the other hand, the man was around the age of 20, wore a large ink-colored robe, had black hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and there was a pitch-black snake coiled on his shoulder. Imo Yinchi, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke in a low voice. Watch out, that man is very strong. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the man, and the man grinned. Chu Kingdom, Kuraki Academy's inner court leader, Feng Yishio, ranked 19th on the Pine Prefecture martial rankings. Yi Xian suddenly walked slowly towards the man, and a sword silently appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked Feng Yishio in the eyes. Jianghu Kingdom, Azure Wave Academy, Yi Xian, ranked first on the Pine Prefecture martial rankings. Behind him, Imo Yinchi was stunned, and then he said, Bandit Yi, when did you become the first? Yi Xian didn't even turn around. First from the bottom won't do. As soon as he finished speaking, his speed suddenly increased, and it grew faster and faster. Chapter 83. The Martial Rankings. Yi Xian had heard of it before. Legend had it that it was a ranking in Azure Prefecture. As for who established it, no one knew. All they knew was that those who could make it onto the rankings were the most monstrous geniuses in Azure Prefecture. And in the entire state of Jianghu, only one person made it onto the rankings. An Lanxiu. Yi Xian didn't underestimate Feng Yishio, but he didn't fear him either. Yi Xian's speed grew faster and faster, and the spirit grace sword in his hand trembled violently. Feng Yishio, who stood before Yi Xian, had a smile on his face, and his eyes were solemn. he didn't underestimate Yi Xian either. How could someone who could make Karaki Academy pay such a terrifying price to kill be an ordinary person? Those who could make it onto the martial rankings weren't weak, be it in terms of strength or intelligence. On the contrary, those who could make it onto the rankings were people who had experienced countless battles, and they knew very well how foolish it was to underestimate someone during a battle. It was fine to underestimate an enemy, but it had to be after the enemy was dead. By Feng Yixuo's side, the woman in black drew her bow and aimed it at the charging Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Feng Yixuo's right hand pressed down on the woman's bow. "I'll do it myself." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Yi Xian who stood before him. At this moment, Yi Xian was less than a few meters away from Feng Yixuo. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly enveloped Feng Yixuo. Sword aura. At this moment, the feeling that Yi Xian gave others was like a sword that could pierce through the sky. The woman in black by Feng Yixuo's side had a trace of disbelief in her eyes. This sort of aura shouldn't appear on a chi-controlling realm cultivator. Feng Yixuo's expression was indifferent as he suddenly opened his right palm. In the next moment, a strange white vortex appeared around his palm, and at this moment, the ground beneath his feet warped and became illusory. Yi Xian had arrived, and his sword descended. A single strike to decide life and death. A single strike seemed to be able to shatter the ground, and the sword aura was extremely domineering. Meanwhile, Feng Yixuo raised his right hand slightly, and in an instant, the white vortex in his hand swallowed Yi Xian's sword. Bang! With the two of them as the center, the ground within a radius of several hundred zhang violently trembled and then cracked. At the same time, the two of them retreated over 100 feet, and in front of them was a ravine that was at least half a foot deep. The surroundings were a complete mess. Yi Xian looked at the spirit elegant sword in his hand, then looked up at Feng Yixuo, who was nearby. Nether Passage Realm. The strength of the person in front of him was not at Ascension Realm at all. It was the Nether Passage Realm. A Nether Passage Realm cultivator in his 20s. In the distance, Feng Yixuo glanced at his right hand. His entire right arm had cracked. If he had underestimated his opponent in the slightest and didn't use his full strength, he would have been severely injured even if he didn't die. Feng Yixuo lifted his head to look at Yi Xian. As expected of a swordsman, to have such terrifying combat strength at the chi-controlling realm. What a surprise. Yi Xian did not say anything. Instead, he raised his sword and charged at Feng Yixuo. When he fought, he never liked to waste words. This was a battle of life and death, not a game. What was the point of talking so much? It was meaningless. Winning was the most important thing. Yi Xian's speed was extremely swift, and it grew faster and faster. The spirit elegant sword in his hand trembled violently while a sharp and fierce glow emanated from it. Feng Yixuo slowly closed his eyes, and then an invisible aura appeared out of thin air around him. The aura of a Nether Passage Realm expert. At the same time, the ground beneath his feet trembled violently while countless bits of rock suddenly condensed in front of him. His right palm faced down as he spoke in a light voice, "Earth roar." As soon as his voice resounded, bang! The ground beneath Feng Yixuo's feet trembled violently. In the blink of an eye, the entire ground was suddenly lifted up, and the ground that had been lifted up seemed like a tornado that swept towards Yi Xian. The expressions of Bai Zhe and the others instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. It possessed a trace of the might of the heavens and the earth. In other words, the martial technique Feng Yixuo executed was at least at the earth rank. The might of an earth rank martial technique executed by a Nether Passage Realm expert was extraordinarily terrifying. Right at this moment, a sword howl resounded, and then a strand of sword light slashed down from afar. Bang! Along with a world-shaking explosion, two figures retreated repeatedly amidst the rubble and dirt. It was exactly Yi Xian and Feng Yixuo. During the process of his retreat, Yi Xian suddenly relaxed his right hand, and then the spirit elegant sword in his hand transformed into a strand of sword light that slashed forward. Feng Yixuo stood in front of Yi Xian with his right palm facing down before he raised it up. Bang! Countless bits of rock instantly converged together and blocked Yi Xian's attack. However, his entire body was blasted back by over 10 m. As soon as he stopped moving, Yi Xian appeared in front of him once more. Feng Yishou suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and then his figure shot forward explosively. Bang! Both of them separated as soon as they collided, and they'd both returned to where they stood earlier. As soon as Yi Xian descended to the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked apart, and he raised his head to gaze at Feng Yishou with a calm expression. The Nether Passage Realm. There was a huge difference between the Nether Passage Realm and the Levitation Realm. Upon reaching the Nether Passage Realm, one would not only be able to fly in the air, but would also be able to control a trace of the power of space. If one could control a trace of the power of space, it would be of great help to one's own body. The most obvious benefit was that one would be able to maximize the power of some Earth-rank martial skills when using martial skills. This was because some martial skills required one's own strength to support them, especially Earth-rank martial skills. If one's own strength was insufficient, one would not be able to display the full power of such martial skills. Moreover, even if one forcefully used such martial skills, there was a possibility of a backlash. As for Feng Yishou, although he was at the Nether Passage Realm, it was obvious that he had just reached it, and he was not very adept at using the power of space. If the other party had really grasped the power of space, when he thought of this, Yi Xian's expression gradually turned solemn. He was never blindly arrogant, nor would he lose himself. He would thoroughly analyze his and his opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Raise the realm. At this moment, Yi Xian deeply felt that his realm was insufficient. If he could not quickly reach the Levitation Realm, he might not be able to put up a fight against an opponent at the Nether Passage Realm in the future. Opposite Yi Xian, Feng Yishou's expression was also incomparably solemn. This was because Yi Xian's battle prowess had greatly exceeded his expectations. From the beginning of the fight, he had not held back at all. He had even used an Earth-rank martial skill in the first round. However, he still could not do anything to the person before him. Moreover, Yi Xian was only at the Qi-controlling realm. If Yi Xian reached the Levitation Realm or the Qi-controlling realm, when he thought of this, Feng Yishou's tightly clenched fists slowly relaxed. Killing intent? For a moment, there was. However, it was only for a moment, because he did not have any deep enmity with Yi Xian. Since there was no deep enmity with this kind of person, why would they become mortal enemies? Feng Yishou turned his head to look in a certain direction. There, an old man holding a walking stick had quietly appeared. When they saw this old man, the expressions of Yi Xian and the others changed slightly. This old man might be on the same level as Old Man Ji. The old man with the walking stick walked in front of Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian, and there was a trace of a complicated look in his eyes. I heard that you wanted to join this country of Zhang's Karaki Academy. Yi Xian nodded. They didn't want you? The old man with the walking stick asked. Yi Xian nodded again. The old man with the walking stick shook his head and sighed. They're all a bunch of retards. As he spoke, he turned his head to look at Feng Yishou, who was not far away, and then said, "No discord, no concord. How about we be friends?" Yi Xian was silent. The old man with the walking stick smiled slightly. "I know, my disciple hurt your friend." As he spoke, he suddenly pointed with his finger. Two white jade bottles appeared in front of Mo Yinqi and Ji Anji respectively. At the same time, a golden flying knife appeared in front of Mo Yinqi, and a long knife that emitted raging flames appeared in front of Ji Anji. Two supreme-grade spirit weapons. Mo Yinqi and Ji Anji were both stunned. The old man with the walking stick smiled slightly and was very amiable. In the bottle, there are top-grade golden soar pills. The market price should be 300,000 gold coins each, and there are 5 pills in each bottle. As for the golden flying knife, it is a supreme-grade spirit weapon that I obtained by chance. As for the long knife, it is called Scarlet Flame, and it is also a supreme-grade spirit weapon. If the two of them have other opportunities, they can upgrade these 2 supreme-grade spirit weapons to the light grade. Hearing this, Jianghu, who was not far away, put away the white jade bottle and the scarlet flame. Especially the scarlet flame, Jianghu's eyes were filled with undisguised joy. Mo Yunqi also hurriedly put away the white jade bottle and the flying knife. Looking at the golden flying knife in his hand, Mo Yunqi was already grinning from ear to ear. Supreme-grade spirit weapon. He had not even touched it before. Baize glanced at Mo Yunqi, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Useless. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the old man with the walking stick. Why? The old man with the walking stick smiled. We just want to be friends with you. Yi Xian fell silent. The old man with the walking stick still had a smile on his face. If you think it's not possible, then it's fine. If there's a chance in the future, you can get to know my disciple again. Yi Xian shook his head. That's not it. It's just that, when he spoke up to here, he glanced at Mo Yunqi and Jianghu, and then he said, all of them have things to take, but I don't. The old man's expression froze slightly. In next to no time, he roared with laughter, and then he flicked his finger. A sword floated in front of Yi Xian. A supreme-grade spirit sword. Yi Xian hurriedly put his sword away and was about to speak. Meanwhile, Baize spoke abruptly. What about me? Yi Xian was speechless. Mo Yunqi glanced at Baize while a cold smile arose on the corners of his mouth. Useless. The old man with the walking stick glanced at Baize, and he hesitated for a moment before he said, My young friend, you cultivate your body. This old man doesn't have anything suitable for you. How about this, I'll give you an extra bottle of medicinal pills. As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and a white jade bottle appeared in front of Baize. Baize didn't refuse, and he put the white jade bottle away. This was worth a lot of money. The old man with the walking stick glanced at Yi Xian, and then he smiled. Then the 3 of us will be taking our leave. If you have time, you can come to Chu Kingdom as guests. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at a certain place on the right, and then he turned around and disappeared into the distance with Feng Yishuo and the woman in black. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Come often in the future. Somewhere in the sky, the old man with the walking stick trembled slightly. In the sky, Feng Yishuo suddenly said, Master, why do you have to be so generous? The old man with the walking stick said indifferently, All of you underestimated that Yi Xian, and I also underestimated that old man. When he heard this, Feng Yishuo understood. After an instant, he seemed to have thought of something, and he said, They are so poor, and their skin is so thick. Chapter 84. At the foot of Mount Azure Billow, Yi Xian and the others were beaming with joy. The 4 of them had gained a lot. Poor. The 4 of them were undoubtedly very poor because the current Azure Billow Academy didn't have any cultivation resources at all. Not to mention cultivation resources, they even had to settle their own meals. As for spirit artifacts, they couldn't even think about it, let alone top-grade spirit artifacts. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sheathed his sword and glanced at Jianghu and the others. Everyone, come over. The 4 of them gathered together. Yi Xian looked at Jianghu and Mo Yunqi. Are your injuries serious? Both of them shook their heads, and Mo Yunqi said, They're just external injuries, not particularly serious. Yi Xian nodded, and then he gestured for everyone to sit down. The 4 of them sat on the ground. Jianghu and the others looked at Yi Xian, waiting for him to continue. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said in a deep voice, We won the battle in the alley. But we didn't win the battle just now. Jianghu and the others fell silent. Yi Xian looked at the 3 of them. After the battle in the alley and the battle just now, I believe that the Kuraki students from other places have a rough understanding of our strength. In other words, our next opponents will be stronger and more numerous. Mo Yunqi grinned, Don't be afraid, just fight. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yunqi, What if we can't win? Mo Yinshi fell silent. Yi Xian said softly, "Our opponents will be stronger and stronger, and there might even be some unimaginable monstrous geniuses, like Missen." Hearing this, Mo Yinshi and the others' expressions gradually became serious. Because such a thing was completely possible, and the rewards offered by Kuraki Academy were really too tempting. With such a generous reward, there would definitely be many true super monstrous geniuses, and Feng Nishio was the most obvious example. This was someone on the martial roll of honor. And Feng Nishio was only ranked towards the back of the martial roll. What if all the monstrous geniuses ranked higher came? At this moment, all four of them felt pressured. Yi Xian continued, "There's one more thing. Kuraki Academy might use some other dirty tricks. Since we've already reached this point, it can be said that if we don't die, it'll be them. Therefore, they definitely won't let this go." As he spoke, he stood up. "The three of you, our current situation can be said to be hopeless. It is hopeless. We have no way out, and there may be no way out in front of us. Old Man Ji was good at fighting, but he couldn't beat many of them. If we want to survive, we can only rely on ourselves. Push yourselves a bit." With that, he turned around and left. In the same place, Mo Yinshi muttered softly, "This guy is giving me a lot of pressure all of a sudden." Bai Zai didn't say anything. He stood up and walked up the mountain. However, he soon stopped and looked at Mo Yinshi. "If you're killed, I'll bury you properly." Mo Yinshi, Kanglan Palace. As soon as Yi Xian arrived at the Kanglan Palace, he saw Yi Ling walk to his side and hugged him tightly. Yi Ling didn't say anything. She had seen the battle between Yi Xian and Feng Nishio. Although she wasn't very clear about the situation Yi Xian and the others were in, she knew one thing about Dao Yi, and that was that there would be many people coming to find trouble with her brother. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head and smiled. "Brother is fine." Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were somewhat cold. An hour later, Yi Xian returned to his room. After closing the door, he entered the prison pagoda. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him were 3 spiritual swords. Spiritual swords. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and secretly circulated the invincible sword body formula. After a moment, he put his right hand's fingers together and gently guided. In front of him, a spiritual sword suddenly turned into a sword light and pierced into his chest. Yi Xian's entire body trembled violently. In his body, the spiritual beauty sword suddenly trembled. Very quickly, the spiritual sword turned into countless energy and gathered towards the spiritual beauty sword. At this moment, his entire body actually emitted a sharp and dazzling sword light. At this moment, he himself was like a sword. Gradually, his body trembled more and more violently, and the aura that emanated from his body also became stronger and stronger. After about an hour, Yi Xian put his fingers together again and gently guided. In front of him, another spiritual sword pierced into his chest. Boom! A powerful sword light suddenly vibrated around his body. This sword light vibrated in all directions. However, when it touched the walls of the prison pagoda, it instantly disappeared without a trace. In Yi Xian's body, the spiritual beauty sword trembled violently. Absorb. Actually, to put it simply, it was engulfing. The spiritual beauty sword itself did not have this ability. However, Yi Xian used his own cultivation method to give it this ability. In other words, it could engulf other swords to strengthen itself. And now, it was Yi Xian's dantian. When it became stronger, Yi Xian could use it to break through himself. It could be said that Yi Xian's cultivation method was rather special. If it were to be spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. At this moment, the sword in front of Yi Xian suddenly flew up and turned into a sword light that pierced into his chest. Boom! A sword light vibrated in his body like a wave. At the same time, the spiritual beauty sword in his body suddenly shot up into the sky. Boom! A powerful aura appeared around Yi Xian. Levitation realm. Yi Xian opened his eyes. In his eyes, there was a faint sword light flickering, but it quickly disappeared. Invincible sword body technique, using one's body to forge a sword. Yi Xian took a deep breath. At this moment, he felt that his entire body was filled with energy. He raised his head to look at the spiritual beauty sword. With a gentle wave of his right hand, the spiritual beauty sword flew into his hand. The moment he held the spiritual beauty sword, it trembled slightly and let out an ear-piercing sword cry. Upper grade bright sword. Bright swords were divided into 3 small grades: lower grade, upper grade, and supreme grade. After he absorbed the 3 spiritual swords, not only did he reach levitation sword, but his spiritual beauty sword also reached upper grade bright sword. Both improved. And after he reached levitation realm, his overall strength would increase by a large margin. In addition to the improvement of his sword, if he were to go against Feng Yishuo now, he had at least 60 to 70% confidence in killing him. The reason why he was not 100% confident was because the other party definitely had a trump card. This kind of demon-like genius would definitely have a trump card. As though he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head to look at the entrance of the second level. Looking at the entrance, he snorted, "Paw!" At this moment, following the crisp sound of a slap, Yi Xian was sent flying out of the prison pagoda. In reality, Yi Xian was sprawled on the ground and his body was trembling non-stop. After a while, he got up. Yi Xian rubbed his face and shook his head with a bitter smile. He had thought that when he reached levitation realm, he would at least be able to exchange a few blows with the other party. However, reality told him that he was still a little brother. He could not be provoked. After Yi Xian tidied up, he left the room and went to the back mountain. He came to the front of the huge mountain that he used to cultivate on. He walked quickly to the peak of the mountain, or rather, he flew. Levitation realm. The current him could already use chi to fly in the air. Of course, his goal was not to fly in the air. As a swordsman, flying on a sword was, of course, flashy. Sword kinesis flight. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at the peak of the mountain. Looking down from the peak, it was at least 200 feet high. It was a little high. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. If he jumped down like this, what if he failed to fly on his sword and could not get up? In the end, he did not choose to jump down like this. With a slight thought, the spirit elegant sword flew out from his body and floated steadily in front of him. Under his control, the spirit elegant sword lay horizontally under his feet. Soon, he stood on the sword. However, the spirit elegant sword could not bear his weight at all and fell directly to the ground. Seeing this, Yi Xian frowned. This doesn't seem right, because he realized that the sword could not bear his body at all. What should he do? Yi Xian frowned. He really wanted to ask the mysterious woman because she would definitely be able to answer his questions. Unfortunately, the mysterious woman was still in a deep sleep. As for the guy on the second level, he did not want to provoke him. That guy would give him a slap for no reason. Now, he could only rely on himself. On the peak of the mountain, Yi Xian looked at the spirit elegant sword in his hand for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. The sword can split mountains and shatter rocks. With such strength, how could it not bear the weight of a person? Thinking of this, it was as if a window had been opened and countless thoughts surged into his mind. If he wanted to fly on his sword, he had to make the sword stronger. Yi Xian held the spirit elegant sword in his hand. The spirit elegant sword vibrated violently and soon, a sharp and dazzling sword ray was emitted from the sword. He slowly released his right hand. He did not cut off his connection with the spirit elegant sword. Instead, he continued to work hard to activate the spirit elegant sword. After a while, his body slowly floated up. Soon, he stepped on the spirit elegant sword with both feet. The spirit elegant sword lowered slightly but did not land on the ground. It carried him. Seeing this, Yi Xian was wild with joy. There was hope. He hurriedly calmed himself down. Soon, he activated the Spirit Elegant Sword beneath his feet by using qi to control the sword. The Spirit Elegant Sword started to vibrate violently, but it was moving slowly. Sensing this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth gradually curled up. Soon, the curvature of the corners of his mouth widened. Just like that, Yi Xian stood on the Spirit Elegant Sword and slowly floated into the distance. It was very, very slow. It was even slower than taking a stroll. However, he was indeed flying on his sword. After a short while, Yi Xian arrived at the bottom of a waterfall on his sword. It took him almost an hour to get there, which was less than 1,000 feet away. Moreover, his sword was very close to the ground. It was less than the height of an adult. Under the waterfall, Biyao, who was cultivating, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. He said in shock, "Bandit Yi." Yi Xian placed his hands behind his back. He glanced at Biyao, who was under the waterfall, with a disdainful look in his eyes. "Please call me Sword Immortal Yi in the future. Thank you." Chapter 85. Yi Xian turned around and left on his sword. However, his speed was too slow. Too slow, too slow. It was like a tortoise was crawling. Behind Yi Xian, Biyao was dumbfounded. Sword kinesis flight? Yi Xian was indeed sword kinesis flight. But something was amiss. Soon, Yi Xian arrived in front of a dense forest on his sword. At this moment, a person who was running not far away stopped. This person was Mo Yinchi, who was cultivating crazily. Mo Yinchi looked at Yi Xian, who was flying on his sword in the distance, with a face full of shock. "Bandit Yi. What are you doing?" Yi Xian placed his hands behind his back and glanced at Mo Yinchi. "Please teach me, Sword Immortal Yi." "Thank you." With that said, he flew off into the distance on his sword. Mo Yinchi was dumbfounded and only regained his senses after a while. This guy. After some time, Yi Xian arrived at Old Man Ji's courtyard on his sword. Unfortunately, he couldn't fly over the wall because the distance between the sword and the ground was too close. Thus, Yi Xian entered through the door on his sword. Old Man Ji was lying on the reclining chair. As usual, his entire body emitted an unpleasant smell of alcohol. At this moment, Old Man Ji suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian quickly straightened his body. He placed his hands behind his back and looked at Old Man Ji. "Old Man Ji, please teach me, Sword Immortal Yi." Pfft. Old Man Ji suddenly spat out a mouthful of alcohol. He glanced at Yi Xian and tapped with his finger. A gold coin landed in front of Yi Xian. "Hurry up and find a doctor. Don't delay." Yi Xian was speechless. 2 hours later, Yi Xian sat in front of the stone steps of Kanglan Palace. In front of him, the elegant spirit sword floated quietly. Looking at the Spirit Elegant Sword before him, Yi Xian was a little worried. He could indeed fly on his sword now, but he couldn't increase his speed no matter how hard he tried. Not only that, but he also found it extremely strenuous to fly on his sword. Something must have gone wrong. But the question was, what was the problem? No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand. A moment later, Yi Xian stopped thinking about this problem and started cultivating the sword control technique. Under his control, the Spirit Elegant Sword kept flying above his head at a very fast speed. It was at least twice as fast as before. Not only that, but he could control it even more smoothly now. When facing an enemy, the power of his Imperial Sword technique was not small. It should be said that it had a miraculous effect. Unfortunately, he always felt that there was something lacking, but he didn't know what it was. He asked Old Ji, but Old Ji didn't understand at all. In other words, Old Ji didn't want to teach him anything about the sword Dao. This made Yi Xian a little depressed. The mysterious woman had not woken up yet, so he had no one to ask. He could only figure it out himself. In a dense forest at the back of the mountain, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground while a sword flew across the field continuously. Every time the exquisite sword flew across, a large tree in the field would be cut in half at the waist. From time to time, Mo Yinchi would come to the forest to fight with him. However, every time Mo Yinchi was about to lose, he would immediately flee. Just like that, day after day passed. On a certain morning, in old Ji's courtyard, an old man suddenly appeared. The person who came was the dean of Karaki College, Li Xuansong. Old Ji lay on the reclining chair, still drunk, and didn't look like he was about to wake up. Li Xuansong glanced at old Ji and said with a smile, "Old Ji, your days are really comfortable." Old Ji said indifferently, "Spit it out." Li Xuansong wasn't angry. He glanced at the back mountain and said with a smile, "An unknown mystic realm was discovered in the Jade Mountain range of the Ning Kingdom's capital. The owner of that mystic realm should have been left behind by the former #1 expert of the Ning Kingdom, Tuoba Fu. Back then, Tuoba Fu had already broken through to the Dharma realm. There must be many good things in this mystic realm. This time, the Ning Kingdom is open to the surrounding countries. As long as one is 20 years old or below, they can participate. How about it? Will the Azure Water Academy participate? No. Old Ji answered decisively. Li Xuansong said with a smile, "Not participating? You guys will definitely participate." At this moment, old Ji suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, he was about to disappear on the spot. At this moment, Li Xuansong, who was in front of him, suddenly slammed his palm in front of him. Boom! In an instant, the entire small courtyard shattered. In the back mountain, the expressions of Yi Xian and the others changed drastically as they rushed toward the Azure Water Palace. Above a ruin, Li Xuansong and old Ji faced each other from afar. Behind Li Xuansong was a black-robed man. In the black-robed man's hand was a little girl. This little girl was Yi Ling. Li Xuansong looked coldly at old Ji and said with a smile, "Tell Yi Xian that if he doesn't participate, then let his sister die in the mystic realm." With that said, he turned to leave with the black-robed man. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded from below. "Old dog, put my sister down." As the voice fell, a sword beam soared into the sky and slashed at Li Xuansong. In the air, Li Xuansong's lips curled into a mocking smile as he pressed down with his right hand. Boom! The sword beam shattered, and at the same time, a sword fell straight down, heading straight for Yi Xian. Old Ji suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. With a gentle pull of his right hand, the force in the sword was instantly dissipated. Immediately following that, he waved his right hand, and the spirit-elegant sword landed steadily in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian wanted to make a move, but he was stopped by Old Ji. Old Ji stared at Li Xuansong in the air. "It seems that in order to kill him, your Azure Water Academy doesn't care about its reputation at all. You actually sent 2 myriad Dharma realms to capture a defenseless little girl. Reputation?" Li Xuansong's lips curled into a mocking smile. "If your Azure Water Academy could kill Dean Gu decisively back then, would it have fallen to this state?" Old Ji clenched his fists slowly. "If you dare to touch her, the old man will definitely kill all the students of your Azure Water Academy." Li Xuansong sneered. "If you dare to touch her, she will definitely die." With that said, he pointed at Yi Xian. "I believe that he won't let you make a move, right?" Yi Xian stared at Li Xuansong. "Old dog, you are the dean of an academy after all. Why can't you take it out on us?" Li Xuansong shook his head and smiled. "Reputation? How much is it worth? The old man only knows that if you don't die, our Azure Water Academy won't just lose our reputation in the future, but our 1,000-year foundation." With that said, he looked coldly at old Ji. "Don't worry, I won't hurt her. I will only throw her into the mystic realm. However, if you dare to touch her, she will definitely die." With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon with the black-robed man. Yi Xian wanted to give chase, but he was stopped by old Ji. Yi Xian looked at Old Ji with bloodshot eyes. Old Ji shook his head. I'm sorry. I didn't expect them to do this. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly turned around with his sword in hand. I don't blame anyone. I only blame myself for being too weak. Old Ji sighed softly. At this moment, Mo Yinchi, Jianghu, and Bai Zai appeared beside Old Ji. Mo Yinchi's face was ashen. Old Ji, this Azure Water Academy is 2F** King Shameless. Old Ji said softly, reputation? The talent and strength that Yi Xian has displayed has already made them fearful. If they don't act out of desperation and wait for him to grow for a period of time, our Azure Water Academy's main courtyard might accept him. At that time, they won't be able to get rid of him. Mo Yinchi said solemnly, can't we inform the main courtyard? Let them come and help? Old Ji shook his head. He's not enough. At least he needs to reach Sword Dao Grandmaster before he's 20. At that time, he might attract the main courtyard's attention. Mo Yinchi took a deep breath. This Azure Water Academy is 2F** King Shameless. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly said, he's going down the mountain. He should be going to Ning country. Mo Yinchi suddenly said, I'll go with him. Bai Zai nodded. Together. With that, the two of them turned around and left. At this moment, Old Ji suddenly said, this is a trap for him. That secret realm is a hopeless situation for him. And if you go, it will also be a hopeless situation for you. Mo Yinchi stopped. He thought for a moment and smiled bitterly. I know it's a hopeless situation. That's why I have to go. With that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. Bai Zai hurriedly followed behind. Old Ji looked at Jianghu. Jianghu said softly, take care. With that, she turned around and returned to Azure Water Palace. After a while, she went down the mountain with a big bag. In the ruins, Old Ji was silent for a moment. He came to a small hall at the back of the mountain. Inside the small hall, there were all kinds of spirit tablets. There were a lot, more than 1,000 of them. Looking at those spirit tablets, Old Ji did not feel drunk at all. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly lay on the ground and took the wine gourd from his waist. It's the dean's incompetence, I couldn't protect you. 15 minutes later, an old man suddenly left Azure Water Mountain and went somewhere unknown. Jianghu country's palace. In a dark hall somewhere, an old man sat on the ground and was playing with a black puppy. At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared at the entrance of the hall. The middle-aged man bowed slightly towards the hall and said something. After a while, the old man in the hall suddenly said, Azure Water Academy is not ordinary despicable. The middle-aged man said solemnly, that youth has gone to the kingdom of Ning. The old man fell silent for a moment before saying, investigate who the black-robed man is. Also, send shadow guards to escort that youth. Forget it, I'll personally escort him. After all, he's someone who once dared to fight for the kingdom of Jianghu. With that, the old man vanished from where he stood. In a private room of the drunken Immortal restaurant. A black-robed man suddenly appeared in the private room and bowed slightly to the old man in front of him. After a while, the old man sneered, what a great Azure Water Academy. They really do know how to court death. Pass down the order. Use all forces to investigate the black-robed man who attacked tonight. Also, send people to escort that youth to the kingdom of Ning. Forget it, the old man will go personally. The black-robed man said solemnly, Tower Lord, are you openly choosing a side? The old man said indifferently, that's right. The old man is choosing a side this time. He's going to fight Azure Water Academy. Icing on the cake will never be as good as delivering charcoal in snowy weather, right? After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. 2 Boundary Mountain. A man suddenly appeared in front of a thatched hut. The man knelt on one knee, Lord, that little girl was kidnapped by Azure Water Academy. A moment later, the thatched hut exploded. A little girl walked out. The little girl's face was ashen. Azure Water Academy? What rubbish is this? If anything happens to her, this lord will slaughter all the students of Azure Water Academy. P.S. There's no more. I don't know how much I've updated. In any case, I've secretly saved up these few days. Finally, it will be published tomorrow. Publishing means that there will be a fee. And a fee means that many of my friends will leave. Just like what the reader said the other day, if there are pirated copies, why should I read the original? Even so, I still hope that I can see your figures tomorrow. I rely on subscriptions to make a living. Therefore, I sincerely hope that the readers who read this book will support the original by subscribing. It's about 10 cents per chapter, which is about 20 to 30 cents per day. And a small subscription from you is a huge support for me. The reason why I didn't choose to publish the book is because there will be a fee if I publish it. Publishing it now will be free. Without further ado, my friends who are staying to read tomorrow, whether you are a lurker or an active person, I hope that after you finish reading, you can leave a message. Even a full stop will do. Let me see who is staying. Or should I say, how many people are staying? Chapter 86. At the foot of Mount Azure Billow. Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In front of him were Mo Yinchi, Bei Zhe, and Jianghu. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "This is my business. You don't have to get involved." Mo Yinchi was a little dissatisfied. "Damn, how can you say that? You're not treating us as brothers." Yi Xian wanted to say something, but Mo Yinchi suddenly said seriously, "Don't think so much. Yi Ling is not only your sister, but also our sister." With that, he patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. "Let's not talk about those emotional things. Let's go." Yi Xian looked at the three of them and nodded. After a quarter of an hour, the four of them boarded the cloud ship. To Ning country. As soon as Yi Xian and the two of them boarded the cloud ship, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the three of them. The old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, old man is the steward of the cloud ship. Young Master Yi can call me stewardly." With that, he looked around and said, "This time, there are only 4 of you on the cloud ship. In terms of safety, young Master Yi and the 3 of you, don't worry. There are experts guarding the surroundings. In addition, our 9th building master is also hiding in the dark. If Kuraki Academy wants to launch a sneak attack, our drunken immortal building will be the first to stop them." Hearing Steward Li's words, Mo Yinchi and the other 2 were shocked. Kuraki Academy's overbearing and arrogant attitude could be said to be no worse than Kuraki Academy's. But now, this drunken immortal building's attitude towards Yi Xian. It was simply a little flattering. Yi Xian cupped his fists at Steward Li. "I'll remember your help this time." Hearing this, Steward Li's mouth immediately turned into a bright smile. "Young Master Yi, the Tower Master also said that we have already thoroughly investigated the conspiracy of Kuraki Academy. Before the 4 of you arrive at Ning Kingdom, we will definitely give young Master Yi a satisfactory explanation." Yi Xian nodded. "Thank you." Manager Li smiled. "The 4 of you should rest early. If there's anything you need, please let us know." With that, he bowed slightly and retreated. At this moment, Mo Yinchi looked at Yi Xian. "Are you the illegitimate son of the drunken immortal restaurant's boss?" Yi Xian shook his head. Illegitimate child? He naturally knew why the drunken immortal inn would express such goodwill. All of this was because of the mysterious woman. Yi Xian glanced at the 3 of them. "You guys should rest early." With that, he turned around and left. Jianghu glanced at Yi Xian and followed. In the same place, Mo Yinchi glanced at Yi Xian's back and sighed, "This guy. Luckily I didn't join Kuraki Academy back then. This Kuraki Academy is 2F** King despicable." Bai Zhe nodded. Despicable. Mo Yinchi looked at Bai Zhe. "Big guy, this time, there's no chance of survival. Baizhe glanced at Mo Yinchi, to die together with you. I'm a little hesitant, F***ck. Inside the private room, the moment Yi Xian entered the private room, he suddenly turned around. Not far from him was Jianghu. Jianghu walked in front of Yi Xian. Kuraki Academy doesn't dare to hurt her. Yi Xian nodded. I know. Kuraki Academy definitely wouldn't dare to kill Yi Ling. Because once they killed Yi Ling, they would have no one to rely on. Moreover, Old Man Ji would take revenge. Kuraki Academy also didn't dare to fight to the death. However, they couldn't just let Yi Xian continue to grow. If they let Yi Xian continue to grow, Kuraki Academy's situation would only worsen. Jianghu glanced at Yi Xian. Rest well. We'll bring her back. Yi Xian looked at Jianghu and said softly, this trip will definitely be very dangerous. Jianghu looked at Yi Xian. If it wasn't dangerous, we wouldn't have come. After saying that, she opened the bag she brought and took out 2 white steamed buns and handed them to Yi Xian. Don't starve. Yi Xian. A moment later, Jianghu left. Inside the private room, Yi Xian sat on a chair and took out a small wooden figure. This small wooden figure looked exactly like Yi Ling. Yi Xian looked at the small wooden figure in his hand. His expression was calm and his eyes didn't waver at all. Weak. All along, he felt that he was very strong. At least among the younger generation, and Lanxiu was the only one who could fight him. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't arrogant at all. And this time, the cruel reality made him realize that he was actually so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Li Xuanzong and the black-robed man had taken Yi Ling away, but what about him? He could only choose to watch. In fact, if not for Old Man Ji, he wouldn't even have the chance to watch. He didn't blame Old Man Ji, nor did he blame anyone. He could only blame himself for being weak. He was too weak. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. If he was weak, he had no right to speak. If he was weak, he could only be bullied by others. If he was weak, he could only endure all kinds of injustice. Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Fresh blood seeped out of his palms. And in his body, the spirit-elegant sword trembled slightly. In the end, Yi Xian's entire body actually began to tremble. After an unknown amount of time, his entire body began to emit a faint qi, and at this moment, a white piece of paper floated out from the second floor. On the paper was a sword. Around the sword was a sword intent, and behind the sword intent was a big question mark. Obviously, it was asking what sword intent was this, imperial capital. News of Yi Ling being kidnapped by Kuraki Academy spread, but it didn't take long before almost everyone in the imperial capital knew about it. In an instant, the entire imperial capital was in an uproar. Anger. This was the current mood of everyone in the imperial capital. Originally, they didn't really like Songlan Academy. It should be said that they only liked the strong. And when Songlan Academy faced Kuraki Academy, they were undoubtedly the weakest side. Hence, in the beginning, everyone stood on Kuraki Academy's side. In this world, people naturally preferred the strong. But after what happened, especially the matter of Kuraki Academy inviting people from Tang, it could be said that the people in the imperial capital hated them to the extreme. One must know that the state of Jiang and the Tang Empire had fought countless times. How many people from the state of Jiang died under the Tang Empire's cavalry? Especially the ordinary poor people, most of their relatives were killed by the Tang Empire. There were also the soldiers in the imperial capital. How many of their friends were killed by the Tang Empire's soldiers? And Kuraki Academy actually invited people from Tang Empire to deal with Yi Xian. One must know that Yi Xian was from the state of Jiang. Therefore, countless people stood on Yi Xian's side without even thinking about it. However, for Kuraki Academy, most people only dared to be angry. And now, in order to kill Yi Xian, Kuraki Academy actually captured Yi Xian's sister, Yi Ling. She was just an ordinary little girl. Regarding Kuraki Academy's actions, it could be said that the entire imperial capital dared to speak up. For a time, the streets and alleys of the imperial capital were talking about Kuraki Academy. And when it came to Kuraki Academy, everyone had a look of contempt. The reputation of Kuraki Academy could be said to be extremely bad. Song Mountain. Kuraki Hall. Who is it? An angry shout suddenly sounded from within the Great Hall. In the Great Hall, Li Xuanzang's face was ashen, who is controlling the public opinion in the imperial capital. At this time, Li Xiu stood up. It should be the drunken Immortal house. Maybe the Jiang country's imperial family also has. Li Xuanzang's eyes suddenly turned cold. They have no reason to stand on the side of Tsanglan Academy. Li Xiu's expression was a little ugly. According to our investigation, when Yi Xian and the others went to the Ning country, the drunken Immortal house's 9th floor master personally escorted them. In addition, the previous king of the Jiang country's imperial family also secretly escorted them. Hearing this, everyone's expression in the Great Hall became a little ugly. This was clearly standing on the side of Tsanglan Academy. The state of Jiang had 3 major forces: Kuraki Academy, Drunken Immortal House, and the Jiang country's imperial family. And now, these 2 forces actually stood on the side of Tsanglan Academy. The situation was not right. Everyone looked at Li Xuanzang, and Li Xuanzang slowly closed his eyes. Li Xiu, did you really find out the origin of that Yi Xian? Li Xiu nodded. He came from Qingcheng. Bullshit. Li Xuanzang suddenly roared angrily. How could a tiny Qingcheng nurture a swordsman? And a great swordsman at that? Before that youth entered Tsanglan Academy, he was already a swordsman. This means that he entered Tsanglan Academy with his skills. And after he returned from Two World City, his strength increased by leaps and bounds, to the point that even Fenju was killed by him. How could this kind of person be an ordinary person? Are you people in charge of intelligence useless? Li Xiu's face was a little pale. The current him could be said to be the most disliked person in Kuraki Academy. Back then, if he had been a little more open-minded and accepted Yi Xian into Kuraki Academy, then Kuraki Academy would definitely have been glorious for countless years. As for Tsanglan Academy, it would be a dead end, without any hope at all. And now, Tsanglan Academy had hope, while Kuraki Academy's situation was getting worse and worse. All of this was because Kuraki Academy had given up on that youth. That youth who wholeheartedly wanted to enter Kuraki Academy. Back then, Kuraki Academy mocked Yi Xian for being a student they didn't want. Now, the entire imperial capital was mocking them, mocking the trash that Kuraki Academy didn't want for killing their strongest student. In the hall, Li Xuanzang suddenly said, "Forget it. What happened in the past can't be undone, so there's no need to continue dwelling on it." As he spoke, he swept a glance at everyone in the hall. Now, what we need to do is to unite. No matter who is behind Yi Xian, or what his background is, he must die. I believe all of you know how Tsanglan Academy declined back then. Everyone nodded in agreement. At this time, Kuraki Academy couldn't afford to have any more problems. Li Xuanzang turned to look at Vice Dean Mo Song nearby. How are the preparations going? Mo Song said solemnly, it's almost done. As for Ning country, King Tuoba Yen has already agreed to our request and will cooperate with us. Li Xuanzang nodded. What about the students from the Great Cloud Empire? Mo Song hesitated for a moment and said, they're requesting a heaven rank martial technique. If we agree, then they'll dispatch someone from the academy to rush over. Agree? Li Xuanzang suddenly said, if they kill Yi Xian, then not only will they be given a low-grade heaven rank martial technique, they'll also be given a low-grade heaven rank cultivation technique. Besides that, they'll be given a light rank spirit artifact. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Heaven rank. That was truly priceless. After so many years of inheritance, Kuraki Academy had less than 5 heaven rank martial techniques, and 3 of them were only incomplete. As for light rank spirit artifacts, Kuraki Academy only had 6 of them. And these 6 items had been accumulated by Kuraki Academy for nearly 1,000 years. They'd given them away just like that. Everyone felt a slight pain in their hearts. Suddenly, Li Xuanzang glanced coldly at them. If Yi Xian doesn't die, then he'll definitely lead Azure Wave Academy to rise to prominence. At that time, it's very likely that Kuraki Academy will suffer the same fate as Azure Wave Academy. We can still fight for it if it's gone, but if the academy is gone and the people are gone, then all of that would be meaningless. Everyone within the hall fell silent. Li Xuanzang gazed at Mo Song. What about the others? Mo Song spoke in a low voice. Besides the academies from the Great Cloud Empire, there are academies from other kingdoms that are very interested in this matter. Quite a few renowned experts have come, and one of them is even a monstrous genius on the martial rankings. Besides that, there are also some independent cultivators. All of them are aware of Yi Xian's strength, so they're confident in their ability to come. When he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Mo Song. I heard that some assassin organizations have sent their members. Li Xuanzang's eyes narrowed slightly. Has the Dark Dimension sent anyone? Mo Song shook his head. I don't know. Li Xuanzang fell silent for a moment, and then he said, send someone to tell them that if they kill Yi Xian, then give them a low-grade heaven rank martial technique as well. No, send the order that anyone who is able to kill Yi Xian will be rewarded with a low-grade heaven rank martial technique, a low-grade heaven rank cultivation technique, and a low-grade light rank spirit artifact. Mo Song gazed at Li Xuanzang and spoke with astonishment. Such rewards are sufficient to kill 10 experts at the Divine Union realm. Perhaps even some old geezers will come. Everyone here was dumbfounded. Not to mention killing Yi Xian, even killing Old Man Ji would tempt them. Of course, being tempted was one thing, and daring to come was another. Li Xuanzang's expression was ferocious. Since Azure Wave Academy is protecting him, then I'll make Azure Wave Academy the enemy of the entire world. An hour later, the bounty on Yi Xian's head was announced, and the surrounding kingdoms were seething with excitement. This reward. It was truly too terrifying. At this moment, even some of the powers that were closer to the kingdom of Jianghu were tempted. Twin World City, within a tent. Jianghu gazed at the secret memorial before her for a very long time. In the end, she stood up slowly. Notify my imperial father and ask Senior Lin to come here and hold down the fort. As soon as she finished speaking, she swiftly walked out of the tent, and then she leaped onto a horse. An old man behind her hurriedly said, Your Highness, you're the commander of an army, so how can you leave so easily? You. Jianghu took out a gold card, and it was the card that Yi Xian had given her all those years ago. The money within it had been transferred away, but she'd kept it all this time. Jianghu grinned as she gazed at the gold card in her hand. How could I betray my lord when he treated me so well? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.